It doesn't belong to her or those close to her. That was one of the headlines of the day. The sheriff's office says the evidence is being sent out to forensic analysis. Ed Lavendera is live in Tucson at the focus of where this investigation is happening right now. Ed.
Alex, well, everything here is still developing and has been developing shortly after 8 o'clock Mountain Time here in Tucson. We started hearing the rumblings that law enforcement vehicles were descending here on this neighborhood, in stunning fashion, not very far away from where Nancy Guthrie lives. So I'll set the scene for you here. This is the road into this particular part. We're on the northern edge of Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood, but down past the sheriff's vehicle, if you go down that way, the road kind of bends away to the right, and that's where we have seen just a cavalry of law enforcement vehicles arriving here on the scene. We've seen SWAT vehicles. Most of those vehicles have already left the scene. We have seen forensic trucks. We have seen unmarked cars, presumably FBI agents, arriving here at the scene. We have seen other evidence collection trucks that we have seen at other moments throughout the last 2 weeks. Now that we are entering day 14 of this search and investigation into the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. So this is still very much active. As you mentioned, the sheriff said that this is a lead. I think that's probably kind of goes without saying. Clearly something significant happening here. But remember, several days ago, there was a man detained about 50 miles south of Tucson. That person was questioned for several hours and then released, and doesn't believe to be connected to this case at this point in any way. And this is another situation that is developing. As you said, the Pima County Sheriff's Department says that they will not hold a press conference, which I think is significant, because if this was really monumental news in this, I think there would be a press conference of some kind. So that's the way I kind of read the way the statement was put out tonight. But we are expecting a written statement, and we were told by local officials that that statement was awaiting kind of being finalized in conjunction with FBI agents here on the scene. So we are waiting that. But the amount of law enforcement vehicles that have been pouring in to this section of the neighborhood has really been stunning here this evening, and it is really shocking because it is so close to where Nancy Guthrie lives. It's as I've described over in the reporting over the last few weeks, this is a neighborhood. It's almost like a spider web of roads that make their way through this area, and we are kind of on the northern edge of this neighborhood, and so the amount of vehicles here. But what exactly brought them here, what exactly the lead is that the sheriff is alluding to, we don't quite know yet. But I should also point out that we spoke with the sheriff just a few hours ago, and he talked about how in the days since the release of the suspect video from the doorbell camera, they have been, seen an avalanche of tips, more than, I think the sheriff told me earlier today, some 30,000 tips that have poured in as they have been making calls for video evidence. We know that FBI agents have been going through this area, canvassing and recanvassing street after street in this neighborhood, talking to neighbors, looking for home video of any kind from these cameras in the neighborhood. So whether or not if it's a piece of evidence like that brought them back here, we don't know yet, or if it was a tip that was called in. The sheriff did tell us that that video of the suspect on the front porch there has been the most monumental, the biggest key piece of evidence that they've received so far, and that has sparked a great deal of feedback and tips that have been called into them. So presumably this could be something that came out of the release of that video. So again, we await here. It has been a cold, chilly night, rainy throughout most of the night. Finally, the rain has slowed down, and the sky has cleared quite a bit. But this is the scene. This is a neighborhood that kind of sits up on a bluff here in this neighborhood. You can see in the darkness and in the distance way back down there is the city lights of Tucson as we sit here on the northern edge, and we sit here waiting for investigators here to give us the latest update on what has unfolded just down the street from where we are here tonight. Alex?
Ed, since this has happened, have we ever seen this much of a law enforcement presence descend on any home?
not like this, especially not this close to Nancy Guthrie's home. The scene down about 50 miles south of Tucson earlier this week, where that one man was detained and questioned for several hours. That street was blocked and roped off. There was a large police presence there on this one, but the amount of vehicles that involve forensic evidence collection, the kind of machinery that we have seen kind of working the scenes as they've collected evidence and returned to Nancy Guthrie's home several times, and also to other parts of the city looking for evidence and trying to find clues. That kind of level we have definitely not seen, Alex.
Which gives you an indication probably of the seriousness of this. Also, though, is interesting, as you pointed out, Ed, that they're not holding a press conference tonight. If they did, you would think that would be the kind of thing where they would announce, we've got our suspect at a press conference. But that is not happening, at least not anytime soon. Ed Lavandera, thank you so much.
Also,
go ahead.
Alex, I should point out, too, no, I was just going to say also, look, the most important part of all of this entire investigation is the fate of Nancy Guthrie. That is what people care about the most. It's obviously what the Guthrie family cares about the most. And so, at this stage, without having heard directly from investigators about, more specific about what has unfolded here, you wonder if it's a moment that's going to provide the kind of news and the kind of clarity on the question that people care about the absolute most.
Right, and so far we have not seen any sort of ambulance or anything leaving that scene.
No, we have not. That's important to point out.
Yeah, all right. Ed Lavandera, thank you for being up all day long, day after day. We appreciate your reporting on this. If something happens there, we'll go back to you. In the meantime, we want to bring into the conversation retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent, CNN law enforcement contributor Steve Moore, who has been with us night after night after night on this. Steve, what do you think is going on right now?
Well, first of all, this entire operation appears to me to be investigation-driven rather than reactive. And to give you an example, the operation the other night appeared very reactive. People were getting there as quickly as they can, pulling people out of cars, doing things as quickly as they could get there. Why I think this is investigation driven is when you get a line of cars, 20 cars, 20 federal cars, plus all the equipment trucks, things like this. This is a pre-planned operation. You'll have somebody's written an operations plan. Otherwise, people would be just getting there when they got there. This seems to be a well-planned out operation. And so it's not reactive, it's proactive.
And what does that signify?
It signifies to me that they've got information that they think is important. They've got information that they think is important enough to get a warrant for, to get people's hopes up for, to expend lots of manpower and emotional energy on. That's a big part of this, keeping people in the game. And so they must believe it's a pretty good lead.
What do you read into the fact that this happened at night and that SWAT moved in at night?
Yeah, this is, I was on SWAT for 5 years, and I think I can count on two hands the number of ops that we didn't do between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. That's how SWAT operates. If you give us an assignment, go get this person, we're going to do it between 4 and 6 a.m.
Why is that?
Because, well, we've learned that people, that's when they're in deep REM sleep. It's not just a sleep. They're in deep REM sleep. They are less likely to have an organized thought about how to resist, things like that. And we can get in and out under cover of darkness. We don't like to go out at night, like in the early evening or mid-evening. There's a lot of cars out on the street. You're doing things like...
On a Friday night especially.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting out on the outside of trucks, riding on the boards, coming inside, and nothing is more risky for tipping the people off than cars in the neighborhood. So you don't like to go in while people are up and around, like on a Friday night. So that tells me that this was a decision, a command decision, that they wanted this location and these people looked at right then and there.
And there's a real sense of urgency that this has to happen right now.
Yeah, for some reason, they didn't want to do it in the morning. They wanted, maybe they were waiting until they got, it could be that you had all these people staged, ready to go, waiting until all the people or the right person was in the location and they decided to hit it then.
Or we don't know when they got the warrant to potentially do this too,
No,
right?
and I would love to see the time of the warrant versus the time they executed the warrant. And that would give you the amount of time they had to, well, they're going to start planning before they get the warrant.
So as we look at this live picture, we're not seeing very much, and that's on purpose, right? They're keeping the media real far away. It has been great weather. There's no chopper shots above.
Right.
What's happening most likely inside? You've been inside in these situations. What's going on?
These are grueling for the agents. First of all, for every person that's in that house, assuming there are people in the house, there's going to be an interview team. And that interview team is going to consist of 3 to 5 people, maybe only 3 talking, but 5 of them would be saying, hey, the person just said this, we need to check this out. So
and separate, right? If there are different people that are being interviewed, there's different teams.
Yes, if you've got 2 people, you got 10 agents, or detectives and agents. If you've got 3, you've got 15. That's just the beginning, because then you have the people searching the home on the short, quick search, and then you have the forensics team starting a massive mapping out of the entire place. Meanwhile, you can't be stepping around just anywhere, because the forensics people, it's kind of like walking around on somebody's floor that just got mopped. No. So it's very grueling, it's tense. They're going to be there all evening and into the morning, and I think right now they're all probably undoing their top button and saying, let's get some coffee. It's
going to be a long night.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to be with us throughout the next couple hours as well. I got the tie going tonight. Steve, thank you. We'll get back to you in a moment. We want to bring in the conversation right now CNN senior national security analyst Juliette Kayyem joining us. Juliette, your reading of what's happening right now.
Yeah, it's obviously hard to tell. I'll agree with everything that Steve said in terms of the timing and the sort of preparation for it means that there was some hint, some clues to get them to this home. We're seeing this in real time. The only question I have is anyone in custody? That is the most important thing right now. It's 1, 2, 3 people. Who are they, and why did law enforcement go into this home or building? I should say that under any warrant, law enforcement is allowed to detain someone. So the fact that they got the warrant and the fact people are detained doesn't necessarily prove that anything bad has happened, but it does mean that there was enough evidence to get law enforcement into that area, lots of law enforcement as we're seeing, and that the people there, if detained, that's the key question we have right now. We should be hearing relatively soon, and we'll hear from media if they see that people have been detained. If there's nothing subsequent to this raid, we may be seeing something similar as we saw a couple nights ago. Someone is taken as a person of interest. Maybe there's a clue that law enforcement is following, but it ends up being, the inability, just because of the number of clues coming in, to separate, the sort of the good noise from the bad noise. That's where we are right now. Right. It's just ability to separate a lot of that information.
Yeah, and you mentioned the concept of people being detained. We know that there are reports on social media that there may have been some people detained. CNN has not been able to independently confirm that so far. The Sheriff's Department has not put out a written statement so far, even though they advertised that about an hour and a half ago or so. Not sure what the holdup is there, but some of that may be this complicated arrangement right now, Juliette, that's happening between the Sheriff's Department and the FBI, which so far seems to have not been super easy day in and day out.
Right. That's exactly right. And I will say that no confirmation here. The only question one should have right now are there people actually detained? Because then that would suggest that whatever was in the warrant, right, would be something about the people who may know something about the case. And that, I will tell you, that's the only thing, that's the only question I have right now is did this result in any detentions that are real? The second question, of course, is then what does that mean for finding Nancy Guthrie? That's all that matters tonight. The fighting that you're seeing in law enforcement, or the reporting that we're doing about some of those tensions, some of it is natural. I will tell you, almost every case you're going to see those natural tensions. The two things put a lot of pressure here on this case. One was just, it's a long time now. It really is. I mean, I think about that every day for Savannah Guthrie and the family, like to sustain this kind of horror for that long. And so the tensions tend to play out over the time. The second is, of course, the interest, the media interest, but I think the human interest in this. I'll tell you, I've done a lot of stories for CNN, and I don't think it's voyeurism. I don't think it's bad. I think I am amazed at how many people who don't really follow things like this will ask me about it. What do I think? I think there's just something so horrible for the family. People feel connected to Savannah Guthrie, but also your own fears about something like this happening in the middle of the night. And so I think that the focus of this also adds to a lot of tension. I wanted to say something. If you say you're going to have information, I don't know why you would ever say you're going to have information until you know what you're willing to say. It's not like it takes hours to build up the media. And so right. I never like delays in any of these cases between the promise of information and when the information comes, because that either means, it means that there is a story that they're trying to figure out how to tell. And I worry about that. If there was nothing there, we would have heard. So that's what we're waiting for right now.
Essentially saying, why say, we're going to tell you something, either tell us something or don't say anything, right?
You're
creating expectations that are unnecessary.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a habit of I think old media, or of we're going to have a press conference, or we're going to tell you something, as if 24/7 news did not exist. And I think in that vacuum, one does worry about what is going on. The law enforcement should either say we're going to have no information tonight, or try to at least give some information, like what you were just saying. Social media now creates a news storyline that makes it very difficult to manage. It's where misinformation comes out, disinformation comes out, and lack of trust. And what we need is trust and confidence in institutions, especially when dealing with such a horrible incident.
Well, we've got the entire team at CNN working overnight tonight to try to do the very thing you're talking about, which is to suss out what is misinformation, what's good information, what's verifiable, so that our viewers are getting that and not just a bunch of conjecture, which social media is full of on this night. Breaking news in the search for Nancy Guthrie. Right now, there is law enforcement activity just 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home in Tucson, Arizona. We've seen more than a dozen law enforcement vehicles, including forensic trucks. Pima County Sheriff says a written statement is forthcoming. They said that an hour and a half ago. We're still waiting. We now know that DNA has been found at Guthrie's home. Now, that includes, we also know that DNA does not belong to her or those close to her. That includes her daughter, Today's Show host Savannah Guthrie. Joining us now live from New York is Scott Curtis, a former FBI agent. Thank you for staying up late with us. Scott, what do you think's happening right now?
Well, clearly they're executing a search warrant at this location here. We know from law enforcement statement that the individuals that resided at that location were detained and not arrested there. So the focus of law enforcement is that location and not the individuals that were living there.
And of course, we are waiting to get official confirmation in terms of the detainment or the arrests. We're hoping to get that information soon. In terms of the focus at this point, we've seen the news about the DNA. We've seen the news about the backpack today. All those things probably give clues to the FBI, right?
Yeah, well, the question I have is, how does this location fit into the investigation as a whole? Does this relate to the individual with the backpack that was seen on the video footage in front of Nancy Guthrie's home? Does this location fit into a tip about other perpetrators that may be involved in this crime? Or is this location related to the individual that was sending the demands to TMZ, saying that they had information about the individual with the backpack? We don't know. That's what we have to try to get answered here. How does this location fit into the larger scheme of things?
You've been involved in some very complicated procedures with the FBI, including the biggest arrest day ever, 127 arrests in one day on something you were heading up. Talk about the fact that we see so many FBI cars as part of this, that sort of the most we've seen put out on any one incident throughout this entire investigation.
Well, one key component that people need to keep in mind is that besides locating Nancy Guthrie, hopefully safely here, the next most important aspect of this is to make sure that we're collecting evidence that's going to survive all the way through a potential trial of those who will hopefully be arrested and prosecuted as part of this case. So what law enforcement is doing here is they're making sure they have all the appropriate manpower and resources at this location so they can effectively and efficiently collect all pertinent, relevant evidence that could be connected to this crime, and do it in accordance with the law and in accordance with policies and procedures there, because they don't want to face a potential suppression of any evidence connected to this crime.
What do you see as what's next for this investigation, and what do you see in terms of the next few hours at this particular location?
That's hard to forecast right now. I mean, I've been involved in, like you said, a lot of high-profile, complex investigations, and you never can really predict where they're going to go from one minute to the next sometimes. What they're going to do is they're going to collect every bit of evidence from this residence here. They're going to process it. They're going to analyze it. They're going to review it. Also, the interviews of the individuals that resided at that location. I'm sure an FBI agent is going to be part of that interview there, because what that does is that creates additional leverage, because lying to a federal agent is a crime. So we're going to make sure that we can get all the relevant information out of those individuals that we can. And based on that, that may lead us to additional search warrants. We just don't know at this point.
Scott Curtis, thank you so much for staying up late again with us, and thank you for your expertise.
Special edition of Laura Coates Live, the search for Nancy Guthrie. Right now, we've learned there's some police activity about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. It's not clear what exactly is unfolding or how significant it is, but we are sending our team there to check it out, and we'll give you an update as soon as they get there. But tonight, there is some major news in the case. The sheriff leading the investigation is telling CNN they've got DNA evidence.
We have DNA. So trust me, if we knew who it was, we'd be on it. But we do have some DNA, and we're continue to work with the lab on that DNA analysis.
And that was from the house?
I'm not telling you where it was. We have DNA.
Will it bring police any closer to finding who abducted Nancy Guthrie, who's now been missing for 13 days? In just a moment, our reporters and law enforcement experts will explain exactly what investigators are doing to find out who that DNA belongs to. The sheriff also told CNN's Ed Lavendera they are chasing down tens of thousands of leads, and I do mean literally tens of thousands. Local police got nearly 5,000 calls just in the first couple hours after the doorbell camera video was released, showing a suspect on her front porch the night that she was taken. The sheriff says they're running down those tips one by one, and it's led them to find multiple items that they are now testing for the DNA I mentioned.
This glove was found the other day, and it was found by a search team that's their job, is to go out and search that area and expand that search. But it was 2 miles away from the house. And it was a tip, it was a lead. Today, we've gone out 5, 10 miles because we found a glove. Everybody's finding gloves. We've got gloves 10 miles out.
But back at Nancy Guthrie's home, this is what got a lot of attention today. Workers carrying out maintenance on her pool. The manager of the crew says it was their first time there. And police say the cleaning, well, that was at the request of the Guthrie family. Now, the sheriff says the family has been nothing but cooperative during the investigation. But when he was asked point blank whether they had been cleared, this is what he said.
The evidence will take us there if that's the case. Right now, we are working close with that family, and yeah, our hearts go out to them.
So they are not cleared as of now.
Nobody's cleared.
I want to start with Ed Lavendera, who is live for us in Tucson. Ed, tell me, what did that sheriff tell you about this DNA that they've recovered?
Well, you know, Laura, this was the first time we'd been able to speak with the sheriff since late last week. So the development or the confirmation that some DNA evidence had been collected on the property here at the Guthrie home was rather significant. And it is significant because, you know, they've collected DNA evidence, obviously, from the Guthrie family, landscapers, people who had direct access to the home, caretakers, that sort of thing. And this DNA does not appear to match any of those people. So it's from an unknown source. So we asked them specifically if they believe this is the suspect's DNA. The sheriff wouldn't say exactly that because there are some, you know, scenarios where it could just be, there could be another explanation for it. But it was significant that they have some sort of DNA. So if there is someone who is taken into custody, it sounds like they have something to compare it to try to draw a connection there between any potential future suspect and what they have from evidence here on the property.
You know, the sheriff says that they've gotten a flood of tips, Ed, after the release of that doorbell video. But what about the other cameras that were inside of Nancy Guthrie's home? Any updates there?
Well, no, but there was a little bit of insight that I thought also was interesting from our conversation with the sheriff. Remember, you know, it took, what, 10 days to access the video from that doorbell camera and, you know, using private entities to try to resurrect that video that was kind of on a back-end system is what we were told. But we were also told that there are multiple cameras on the property. And I asked the sheriff if the similar work that was done to get the front doorbell camera video resurrected, if that was being done for the other cameras as well. And the sheriff said they're trying. So it is possible, if they're able to pull off the exact same thing that they did with the other camera, that there could be even more videos from the property or perhaps inside the home that investigators could have at some point.
Just think of how many tips were generated from the outdoor camera tips and, of course, the video. Imagine what other jigsaw piece puzzles could be coming together, Ed. I mean, the sheriff, he's been optimistic from the very beginning, Frankie, that they will figure this out, that they will bring Nancy Guthrie home. Did you sense any change in that optimism or attitude?
I didn't. You know, that's and I think that's probably the nature of law enforcement investigators in a situation like this. They're not going to give up hope, and they don't have any reason to believe otherwise. At this point, there's no evidence that suggests that. So I think they clearly want to do as much as they can to keep that hope going. But the sheriff did acknowledge, you know, this investigation has been a roller coaster, many ups and downs. So kind of keeping that energy and positivity going and that hopefulness going, I would imagine, is incredibly difficult, especially for no other people than the Guthrie family themselves, as you could probably imagine.
Ed, this is every day. Optimism is what people are holding on to.
Yeah.
Opt and hope. Thank you so much. Please stand by. I'm here to break down the latest investigative threads with me. Former members of the FBI, retired FBI Special Agent Michael Harrigan, and also former FBI counterintelligence operative Eric O'Neill joining me as well. First, let me begin with you, Oz. You heard from the top of the show that there is some police activity that's happening about 2 miles from her home. That radius, interesting, because of course 2 miles from that was where they saw there was a glove at some point that was located, DNA testing, as we know, happening. We have some live pictures of what's going on right now, and we see at least one person out in the area. Any insight, you think, as to what this could portend in that radius?
Absolutely. I think what you have here, Laura, is as the case goes on, as it ages here, the case spreads out in concentric circles further and further out. So they start to consider evidence that may be as a result of tips or other information that may lead them to extend that perimeter of search. So I think that's natural in this case, is that, as the sheriff alluded to, some of the gloves have come in from 10 miles away. Likely a lot of those will be totally non-relevant, but you want the public to provide those tips. Even if the public thinks that it's not going to be helpful, you want them to call in, provide those tips, and then law enforcement is going to give it the weight it deserves.
The concentric circles are important to me because this is about 2 miles from her home, and there's a lot that have been made about revisiting the actual home multiple times. And you heard from many people who they were really, they had issues with the fact that it had been a reopened crime scene, but revisiting a scene was not unheard of. The idea this is an area outside, but still looked at again, even these days later, does that surprise you that they're revisiting or looking at areas even miles away?
No, not at all. In fact, what's happening is they're looking deeper into the neighborhood. And the neighborhood is a warren of streets. It's a complicated area. And I suspect what the FBI and law enforcement is looking for is some sort of camera, which is why they're asking people for their Ring and home camera footage to go back in time. And there are 2 specific dates they're looking at. So they know something they're not telling us, and asking people to look for that footage because I suspect they have some sort of evidence or a tip that the criminals were casing the area earlier. And so they're trying to figure out where they were in the neighborhood because getting in and out of there is really difficult. And if you're a smart criminal, you're not using your phone and GPS because the FBI can track that later using every phone pings off a cell tower, right? So it's not perfectly accurate, but you can get a sense of where someone was when. So they're going to have figure their way in and their way out, their ingress and egress. After they commit the crime. And that leaves a record if someone caught it on camera.
And that's important too, because we've heard a lot about, Ring cameras, obviously kind of the generic way of thinking about what another house could pick up on. But you're right. I mean, to get from point A to point B, you're likely going to pass things that are maybe municipality owned. You're talking about private businesses, gas stations, for example, other businesses that might be in the area. If a person had to make their way to the area, walk me through the way in which officers are going to be trying to eliminate people. Obviously, they're going to ask for the cars of every neighbor that's there. They know what cars are supposed to be there, but trying to decipher which should not. What does that look like?
Well, I think what you have here is when you look at a case like this, the amount of data that's coming in, both from electronic means and also from human intelligence, where people are calling in and providing information. The hard part is the analytical process. They've got to go through, like you said, they got to go through each of those cars that are seen on camera. They have to establish who belongs to that car or who the car belongs to and see if they were supposed to be there or not. So when you look at the crush of that kind of data there, I mean, that's incredible. You're talking gigabytes likely of electronic data, of recordings, of tips, all this stuff coming in. So the teams behind the scenes have to grind through this. And
but for the FBI's presence, could a local law enforcement entity do that on their own?
Likely not. When a case gets this big, what you have is, from Quantico, you have crisis management specialists, and each field office has these, and they're specially trained and equipped to go into major cases and provide a coordinating kind of a coordinating tool. They bring all these leads together, they work with the investigators, and they help to disseminate leads out so that leads get to the investigators and get prioritized. Because if you're looking at 20,000 leads here, someone has to prioritize that because you're not going to have 20,000 investigators here. You're going to have a limited number, and they have to figure out which leads are important. So that database and the way they organize that is very important. That's what the Bureau brings. The core and the point of this is still going to be the Sheriff's Department. That's their city, that's their county, but the Bureau is there to assist.
Speaking of the Sheriff, we are learning that we may get an update from the Sheriff's Office about the activity that's happening right now. From what we're looking at, you're seeing live pictures out there right now of what's on the scene. There's the sheriff of Pima County, obviously, truck that's there. There's some cones. We are seeing already, of course, the lights in the distance that are happening there, but also it seems to be, I can't tell if this is a residential area of some sorts we're looking at. One thing that we have noticed, and I think I'm seeing, is that rain that's happening in the area as well, which, you know, you had mentioned, Eric, in the past that can complicate. I mean, the terrain itself, the topography of the area, all things complex for the average person to understand how to navigate. The darkness, the vast expanse of space, and now the weather. These things can really make time of the essence.
Yeah, time was always in the essence of the case. I mean, this is a case where someone was abducted, kidnapped, and the hope is, of course, that she's still alive and out there somewhere. So this isn't a case where you can have a slow burn, you can do a lot of careful forensics, where you have to move quickly in order to preserve that life. And so time is an enemy here, especially when weather comes in. It can destroy trails. When you have all these different people moving through the property, you know, the sheriff did make a mistake in opening up the crime scene, and then, of course, they quickly closed it again, I think before the FBI came in, because they wanted to do more forensics. The FBI sends drones over the property, and they find spaces that they never thought to look at, and so that's why they were back and looking at all these different places. So what they want to do is move quickly, and look, in the last 2 days, this case has really progressed. You've got the video footage, which gives you an impression of the person. Now you have the height, you have the approximate weight, you can do a gait analysis, you can do a facial structure analysis. We have a backpack, so now they're looking at every Walmart, I guarantee you, and pulling the transaction records from every single person who bought one of those Ozark backpacks from a local Walmart, and then tracking them down. And then, like we spoke earlier, they're using traffic cameras. There's everyone who has a Ring camera is uploading to the Ring app, and Ring is sending that data to the sheriff's office. You can take data from whatever home security camera you have and upload that to the sheriff's office. That's going to the FBI's crisis management team.
Yeah.
They are probably using AI to try to cut through some of the noise there, and they've got to be close to some leads.
Well, we also are learning. I mean, I want to show everyone a map just so you understand how close we are to the area of Nancy Guthrie's home. The law enforcement activity is not that far away. We're talking within 2 miles. And obviously, you see there's some of the meandering paths that it takes to get from the main roads that appear to be, you know, more than, you know, 2 or 3 lanes all the way over to Nancy Guthrie's home. So even to enter where her home is, it is a navigation. But the fact that that area is closer to what looks to be more of a high traffic area. I saw an officer stopping someone and then putting a cone back in their place to show that they are confining whoever is supposed to be into that area. But put up that map. We have the map on the right here for people. Looking at this map, Michael, this is not so far away as to make an exploration of this area obsolete. This is still very close.
Absolutely. It's, you know, you look at that area and look at all the houses in there and all the streets. So there's a lot of, it seems to be a pretty dense concentration of residences and potential paths here. A person could drive any which way out of here. There's many feeder roads in there. So I think what's happening here is as they get tips from the public, someone may have seen something thrown out of a vehicle, or they saw something along the side of the road that to them catches their attention. Well, they have to go out, take a look at that item, potentially collect the item, and then send it for processing. So considering that, and it's a major area, it's not like this is a very rural area where there's like, she didn't live on a road where there's, you know, houses are miles apart here. You know, there's a lot of potential avenues here for them to look. And a lot of places, evidence or instrumentalities of the crime could have been discarded along the way. Anywhere in there.
And that's, especially, again, we have an officer who seems to be checking who's there, and these also are law enforcement vehicles, but that discarding part, this has been really fascinating for people who have been looking at this intently, and that is when somebody has planned what it appears to be a crime and has been able to evade authorities for as long as this person has, short of the recovery of and residual data, the surveillance footage from that camera, many would think how bizarre it would be to simply discard a glove or discard some aspect of your clothing or otherwise and not maybe have a more finite way of destroying it. But those are exactly the moments sometimes that people can become, when they're emboldened as criminals, can make those sorts of mistakes, believing, hey, I'm outside of this radius, they're never going to suspect this. And these are the kinds of mistakes or kinds of moments that law enforcement investigators are going to hone in on and wait for.
No, you're exactly right. And some of these cases are broken because the criminals make mistakes. Criminals make mistakes. They have to do everything perfect all the time. And it's that one mistake that investigators pounce on. We are looking for mistakes. We're looking for that error they make that gives us help, like leaving DNA somewhere on the crime scene. Like the sheriff said, they found it. We don't know where he found it, but that's very useful. If it's not the family and it's not someone who worked in that home, it could be one of the perpetrators. Then you find other evidence somewhere else, like maybe one of those gloves, and if you compare it, you say, look, the glove was here. It's the same DNA evidence as what we found in the house or the garage or near the pool or wherever they found it. But all of these are great clues. Now, I mean, they did a pretty good job at getting away with it for 13 days. Do I think that as they're driving away, they threw a glove out the window? Probably not. But they could have dropped it by accident as they were trying to move Mrs. Guthrie. It's not always easy to move a person who doesn't want to be moved.
I just want to remind people that there was an incident earlier in the week. And remember, this week has been a whirlwind of activity, which has otherwise been excruciating for the limbo that the Guthrie family has experienced, where they detained somebody. They actually executed a search warrant on someone's home. That person was later released after questioning and said in interviews that he was told his eyes or his eyelashes resembled the person who is depicted, who is now a suspect inside of that video. So there are instances where even law enforcement, as diligent and optimistic and productive, cannot have a lead come to into fruition. But here, the idea, again, that we've got this police activity underway that's 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home, and this is coming after that crowdsourcing of information. Do you view the crowdsourcing, the increase of the reward, the sort of limbo that we've been seeing, is that a sign of weakness on behalf of the investigators, or do you think that the public is not privy to the underlying iceberg?
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Laura. I think it's absolutely that the public's not privy here to what's going on. And in these cases, a life hangs in the balance directly. And this is the most serious of law enforcement cases where you have somebody who could become a homicide victim or already has been, but the last indication you have is she was alive. So with a life hanging in the balance, law enforcement has to go through a very quick analysis of actionable leads and aggressively pursue them. So when you have a person who is indicated that could be connected through an eyewitness report or some data points to this person may be a delivery driver, you have to go heavy on that. And that includes a search warrant, obtaining of evidence, and luckily in this place, it worked. It worked. He was excluded, and they moved on. But they can't leave any stone unturned here. And that's the tough part in these cases, is they have to move quick. And so there'll be a lot of dead ends here. But at one of these cul-de-sacs of information, there will be a solution at one point.
That's right.
We have Ed LIVE-N18L who's making his way to the scene because I want his eyes, I want his ears there to tell me exactly what that police activity is looking like. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we'll learn more about why the police are suddenly 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home, appearing to close down parts of the road. Ed LIVE-N18L will be on the scene and give us everything next. Let's go back to CNN's Ed LIVE-N18L, who's at the scene of the police activity about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. Ed, what are you seeing?
Well, right now we're at a checkpoint in but we're in basically the same neighborhood as Nancy Guthrie, like less than 2 miles away. It took us just a few minutes to drive from when we last spoke to you at the top of the hour to get over here. And right now the road that you see down this way goes down past this sheriff's truck and kind of bends down there. That's where the law enforcement activity is going on right now. We don't have any real clarity as to why they're here or what it is that they are finding. So we're awaiting that. So we want to kind of take and proceed with a lot of caution here because, as you well know, this could turn out to be nothing, could turn out to be significant. We just don't know at this point. Obviously, earlier this week, we saw similar kind of activity. We saw a search of a home. A person taken was detained and questioned after being pulled over about 50 miles south of Tucson in the town of Rio Rico. So we don't know if this is going to be something similar or what kind of clearly law enforcement here pursuing leads in the Nancy Guthrie investigation, which authorities have been telling us throughout the day have been pouring into them.
Yeah.
But what exactly is materializing here, we don't quite know just yet.
Ed, are there normally security checkpoints, and is this police presence higher or lower than you're normally seeing?
This is actually in this immediate area. There's only one officer there, kind of blocking off the roadway. This is where Pima County authorities here just a short while ago announced that this would be a media staging area. So presumably someone will come out here shortly and let us know exactly what is going on. But from this vantage point, it's very difficult to kind of see because the road goes down and kind of bends around to the side. And so it's a little bit difficult, but right now authorities are more concerned with kind of keeping the roadways clear. There's obviously a huge amount of interest, and I don't think I can overstate that at all, Laura, with neighbors here in the area, especially given that this kind of activity is unfolding so close to where Nancy Guthrie lives. So, that is definitely obviously something that's causing a great deal of concerns for residents here in the neighborhood. So we will continue to monitor. I don't hear much from down there. It's actually rather quiet considering the magnitude of what may or may not be happening, and literally just one officer there kind of guarding the entrance and the path down that roadway right there. Presumably there's way more and more intense law enforcement presence as you get past that truck there that you might see in the background.
And that truck is blocking an actual roadway, a walkway? Is it a hiking trail? Are you able to see where the lights are pointed in any direction?
No, it's a roadway. It's like one of the roads in the neighborhood here, and actually from where we're standing, you actually can see it. We're in the foothills just north of Tucson, so you can actually see the city lights, miles down in the distance there, because we're kind of sitting up high on a bluff here, if you will. So again, it's you don't hear a lot of activity. It's hard to even see kind of police lights down there past the truck. Very serene up here where we're at for the moment. But we will continue to monitor that.
I find it very telling, Ed, also because this has been one of the areas people have been wondering about whether Ring cameras or other neighborhood cameras would pick things up. But even from your vantage point, given where you are, you're not seeing below a certain area, which obviously adds to the complications of being able to detect activity, even for cameras that are directly across from one another. Please stand by for us. We have a lot more questions as activity may be picking up. Joining me now is Tiffany Roy. She is a forensic DNA expert who used to work at the company that's actually the one that's processing the gloves and other evidence that's been found from the Guthrie case. And we don't have all the information as to the exact location of the gloves or from which location they were actually obtained. But Tiffany, as we're watching this law enforcement activity play out, we do know that DNA from the home was sent to this lab for processing. Why this lab in particular? And how quickly do you think they're able to turn it around?
Well, Pima County has a contract with this laboratory, and they have a long working relationship with the laboratory. So they have their own laboratory, but they also routinely send work to this lab, and through their government grants, they have a relationship. They have quality support. They believe this lab does good work. So they sent. Once Pima County was done with what they could do in-house at their laboratory, then they turned to this other laboratory to do things that were above and beyond, I think.
Many people may be more familiar, as opposed to the lab in Florida, with Quantico as even a concept. The sheriff is defending his decision to send the evidence to the lab you mentioned and not to Quantico, knowing that there is his FBI presence. He says that the lab already actually has Nancy Guthrie's DNA. It has her housekeepers, it has her landscapers. Would the FBI lab that people may know more by name, would that be more effective, you think?
I don't think there's a difference in effectiveness with the laboratories that are doing the testing, because all of this stuff is being provided to these labs by the law enforcement agencies, by Pima County, by the detectives. They're providing all of the standards, we call them standards, for people that are involved, would routinely visit the Guthrie home, all of the staff, all of the people who would be expected to be there. Pima County is providing that to these laboratories that are doing the testing, whether it's the private laboratory or the FBI laboratory. It's really just I think they're trying to keep their things in-house. What they could do in Pima County, they did. And then anything they needed to outsource, rather than go into the FBI, they went with the private laboratory that they've used in the past for other investigations because they had confidence in them for one reason or another.
And again, they're going to be testing whatever they see in the samples against other known profiles and otherwise in a larger database of information. Tiffany Roy, thank you so much.
No problem.
Everyone, we're watching right now live images, live video right now of an area in Tucson about 2 miles. Let's actually bring up the map for a second, if we can, in the corner, so people know this activity is happening about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. Remember, it was a 2-mile radius within which a glove was found that has now been tested for DNA, and we're waiting to hear about those results. This activity is underway. Ed Lavendera is on the scene. We're learning more about what might be taking place there. Of course, the weather complicating our ability to see, and of course, the dark terrain. Former FBI profiler Greg McCrary joins me now as well. Greg, okay, I wanted to have you on because you talk about a thing called the post-abduction behavior, and that's something that's very important. Right. Can you explain, first of all, what post-abduction behavior even is, and then tell me why it's so critical?
Right. Well, we obviously have an abduction here. So what this means is for the offender, his normal routine has been completely disrupted. If he has this victim, he has her under control someplace, but that's totally all-consuming. So for the viewers, we want to overlay all this information. We've got the physical description, we've got the videos, the stills, and then if that looks like somebody you know, and then suddenly his behavior has changed, his normal routine is totally changed and been disrupted since then, that would be another indication that you really need to call in that lead. So being aware of that, thinking about that, but also be aware that if this had been planned, that he may have provided an excuse. Hey, I'm going to be out of town for a couple of days. Got to see my sick aunt up in Des Moines or something like that. So don't rule it out if you think, hey, he looks like the guy, but no, he told me he was going to be out of town, so it couldn't be him. You got to call all that information in for sure.
That's important to think about because people don't necessarily know what they don't know, and investigators have understandably probably kept a lot of information closer to the vest, so that in the event they do identify a suspect, they want to be able to cross-reference that against what would have been known publicly and what this person may uniquely understand. One thing that has been a fixation has been really the only morsel people can sort of sink their teeth into has been that surveillance footage that was reclaimed by the data. I know that one of the things you've been looking at is that backpack, and the fact that the backpack was full jumped out at you. Talk to me about why you think that may help rule out that this was some sort of home invasion gone wrong. And I will note, we actually had the backpack, not the same model of it. And frankly, it can be flattened very easily. That looked to be completely full in some respects on that person's back, which means it was likely full of something. Why does that rule out to you that it was a home invasion?
Well, it mitigates, excuse me, it mitigates against it because you would expect the offender to go in with an empty backpack if he's going to steal stuff. If this is a property crime, a home invasion gone bad, be more likely he would carry an empty backpack in so he could put in laptops and whatever he was going to steal. But this one was completely full. There's no way he's going to get much of anything else in there. The other thing, excuse me, this goes to a larger issue of trying to understand what crime it is we're investigating. So is this a home invasion that went bad? Is this a kidnap for ransom? Or could it be another motivation for a kidnapping, such as a stalking type of personality? So we're taking the kind of the 30,000-foot view of this, but that's what you have to do at the beginning. You can't rule out any particular hypothesis. You have to develop every idea and then compare it against the evidence until you can rule something out or rule something in. So looking at the home invasion, I mean, most burglars do not want a confrontation. So they go into unoccupied dwellings. Many times they're daytime burglaries because people at work. But going in at almost 2 o'clock in the morning, you're almost guaranteed to find somebody in that, you know, in the residence. Plus, he's going in with a gun, and the backpack is full. So that to me tends to indicate that it might not be, you know, just a home invasion. But the other thing they would be doing investigatively is to look for any prior similar crimes. And by that, I mean any other home invasions, especially at night, because this could be, if so, this could be part of a pattern in that investigative avenue. It could provide a lot more evidence as well. And then if it's a ransom, which it might have looked like at the beginning, you'd expect some money, but that seems to have dropped off. The other thing is it could be some kind of stalker based on a celebrity.
Greg, I want to get back to the idea of your final point about the stalking, but the ransom notes, we still don't know if they were legitimate or if they were somehow somebody exploiting the grief and agony of the family. But if they weren't real, then they could presumably rule out money as a motivating factor. And that perhaps leaves you with the most eerie feelings of what other motive would possibly be left.
Another possible motive, if we rule out the ransom, is that this could be a stalking kind of personality. And why that's a possibility here is the celebrity stature of Savannah Guthrie. And we know that many morning female hosts, TV hosts and stuff, become the victims of stalking. And it generally doesn't end in violence, but sometimes it can. And in the morning shows thrive by creating a very warm, friendly, intimate atmosphere. They're all family, all that. And for a delusional person or a very, very lonely person, that they come into their living room every morning and they develop this delusional relationship, and that can go bad sometimes. So you want to look at that idea. Has there been any communication with Savannah Guthrie, with the mother, with the show that's weird or intrusive or inappropriate? And can we identify those people? So that's another avenue I'm sure they're taking a look at.
Oh, God, introducing social media exponentially makes this more complex. My goodness.
Indeed.
Greg McCrary, thank you so much for your expertise this evening. We are still waiting and watching to see
Thanks for having me.
What this increased police activity is about. The rain certainly picking up as the police activity is as well. An active SWAT situation we're seeing. It looks like 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. We will hear more after a quick break and bring you exactly what we know. About 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. Ed, what's going on now?
Well, not much has changed, Laura. We're still anticipating, hopefully, hearing from Pima County Sheriff's officials, perhaps even FBI officials, at some point here in the coming moments, hours, or minutes. Who knows? We will try to figure that out. But you know, the scene here just kind of remains. This stretch of road in Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood is still locked down.
Yeah.
No way to get into this particular stretch. The road kind of goes down over behind the truck that you see me and kind of bends to the right over there, and that's where the activity is taking place. From this vantage point that we can't get past, it's very difficult to see what is happening down there, and we haven't really heard anything of note since we've been here on the scene as well. Obviously an intense amount of interest and nervousness, especially for the residents who live in this particular pocket of Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood. But as I mentioned a short while ago, we're just a couple of miles away from Nancy Guthrie's home, probably easily less than 2 miles. So, you know, significant that this kind of activity is happening so close to where Nancy Guthrie's home is, and also given just that these are the types of neighborhood, these are the streets that we have seen investigators canvassing and recanvassing over and over for the last 13 days, now going on 14 days. So obviously we're anxiously awaiting exactly what is going to happen here. It's still too early to tell. Bear with us. We will, you know, get the best possible information. We want to make sure it's 100% accurate and make sure that we can share with you what is the right and correct information to share. So we're working to get that, but right now it's going to take a little bit of time for us.
Ed, I trust your instinct, and you will bring us what we need to know when you have it. How long has this presence been there? You got there pretty quickly from the home of Nancy Guthrie. We have a map of showing how far away this is, less than 2-mile radius. I would note again, a glove was found within a 2-mile radius as well, and it's obviously been sent to processing for DNA and beyond. But Ed, about how long has this police activity even been going on? Do you have a sense?
Well, it's interesting. We've been hearing rumblings of activity, nothing that we could confirm or of anything that was exactly information that we could confirm that it would be proper to share. But there have been kind of rumblings going on all evening, and then shortly before your show started here at the top of the hour, we started hearing this specific area is the area that was seeing the law enforcement activity that we're seeing tonight. So it hasn't been going on that long. I'm losing a little bit of track of time here. We're at almost an hour into it, probably, at least. So this could take some time, just like we saw earlier this week down in south of Tucson, about 50 miles. It took several hours for that situation to be, for the person who was detained to be questioned, for the home to be searched. That took several hours, went well into the night. So that could very easily be something that we're about to witness here tonight. And if it's something more significant, more serious, this is obviously something that will probably last all night long.
At LIVE-N18L, please stand by. Bring us what you have. Back with me, Michael Harrigan and Eric O'Neill. I need my FBI and counterintelligence experts here. Okay, they're confirming that it's an active SWAT situation. My vision of SWAT, I'm thinking Hollywood style, someone rappelling down a building. Bring me to the reality. What does it mean for SWAT to be on the scene, or at least a part of it?
Well, generally, Laura, what you're going to have is a SWAT or a tactical team. Tactical assets would be deployed in a situation where they're either about or they're serving a search warrant, or they're encountering somebody or interviewing somebody who they feel could be a danger. So those are generally those are going to be your situations where you're going to have SWAT deployed. Normally,
how big is that team normally?
Oh, the team can be anywhere from 6, 8, 10, 12 individuals. Normally on a long case like this, you're probably going to have multiple SWAT teams switching off on shifts to be on standby.
A SWAT vehicle's coming right now. What does that tell you, that type of vehicle? And is there some urgency behind it?
It doesn't look like they're moving very urgent, but that looks like an armored vehicle that is generally used by SWAT to, there it goes, it says SWAT right on the side.
Right.
So that could be a support vehicle coming in with more equipment, specialized equipment for the team, or it could be more team members coming in to assist.
And it's interesting that...
Oh, wait, sorry, the sheriff is saying there's no press briefing. A written statement is forthcoming. I see a SWAT vehicle, though. Tell me your point?
My point is that it's interesting that the street is closed off, and what I would suspect is that there was a good tip, or they received some information from the camera footage that people are uploading, and the only reason they would bring SWAT into a residential street like that is if they had a person of interest or they had an interest in a home. And I think, Mike and I were talking about this during the break, that they were looking at a residence. And that's why you would bring SWAT in. You're not going to bring SWAT in to do a forensic search of a glove on the side of the road. You're going to bring it in when you want to control a residence, and what they're doing is they're controlling the street so we don't have civilians walking into a potential hostile zone. Now, you bring SWAT when you're worried that the person that you're going to go approach could shoot back.
Armed and dangerous.
And they're trained to deal with that. I mean, Mike, you were SWAT.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on this. I think that you hit the nail on the head here. It's more than just another routine lead here. There's something going on there that they need to have a specialized team to help support the agents or the officers that are actually making contact there. So there is more to this, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this and what they're able to share with us.
We've got a written statement forthcoming. There will not be a press briefing. There's an active SWAT situation 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's homes. In fact, stand by. We're learning more information. I see more cars coming in and out of the area as before. Remember, there was a very slow pace. The cones are broken out. Now I'm seeing at least about, half a dozen vehicles now going into a particular zone that had previously been closed off, including forensics now. Forensics, a SWAT vehicle, and others going in. And remember, this is a residential area. In fact, you know what? I've got one of Nancy Guthrie's neighbors, Marla Handler, who's with us right now. Marla, Everyone's trying to understand this area. You are familiar with this particular area. It's about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. I'm watching at least now a dozen vehicles, it seems, going into that area. It's been blocked off from media access. Do you know that general vicinity? Is that residential? Is it some sort of trail?
Yes.
What could that area look like?
So this area near Nancy Guthrie's home is residential. They're all homes in this area.
So Marla, when you're looking at what's going on, and you've had some, I think, contacts with the FBI over the course of what has been happening, can you describe those conversations so far?
Yeah, basically they are doing an amazing job. They are just on every street asking questions, talking to all our neighbors, trying to inquire, you know, where Nancy is, trying to gather evidence. We really feel like, you know, the investigators, the FBI, all of the security personnel in the neighborhood is really doing an outstanding job and really just turning over every rock to find something.
That's very comforting, I'm sure, for the family and all who are just deeply invested in the safe return of Nancy Guthrie. Have you been able to review any video surveillance that you may have and have turned anything over that might be helpful?
Yeah, we have not. We have looked at our security cameras. We have very extensive security on our home as well as our street. It's very extensive. We have outdoor cameras, we have motion detective cameras, we have sensor lights, smart locks, we have door and window sensors, we have Ring cameras, 24/7 security, and wireless outdoor cameras that face the street. So we are fully equipped, and it's just, yeah, it's just incredible. Cameras are a lifesaver.
Do you have all of that because of a concern or proactively? Is there a concern about your safety in the area more broadly, or was that something you have done proactively to ensure your safety?
Yeah. I think just from the neighborhood, from our HOA, we feel like it's very vigilant over the years to have security. It's very important. Cameras are really important, so it's just a neighborhood, an HOA thing that we all feel is really important.
Yeah.
If I could just add a quick little conversation, a little story. About 6 months ago, I installed a Ring camera in my elderly father's home, and it immediately alerted to me that my father fell under the coffee table. And I was able to contact the paramedics to save my father's life by using a Ring camera. So I have to say that the real benefit of cameras is to protect the ones we love. And by having a camera, you're doing the vigilant that you're going to make sure that your loved ones are safe and sound and that you feel comfortable. We have a lot of elderly people that live in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult. The homes are not right next to each other. They're really spread out in the Catalina foothills, not like other cities. So it's very difficult to see. If there's a disappearance, a kidnapping in one home, the next house would not even know about it.
Oh my God.
That's how we're so separate. So that's how Tucson, Arizona is. We're 500,000 people. We're a very small, close-knit family, community. University of Arizona is here, full of vibes and sports, but the homes are separate.
Marla,
and
you've
it's
offered
very
a great,
difficult to know what's going on.
A very good public service announcement. I certainly hope for safety for others as well. Thank you for your really astute observations here. We're watching. There is major breaking news. We've got police activity happening about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. SWAT is involved. Forensics involved. The sheriff's office says they will soon release a written statement about just what is going on. I'm going to get straight to CNN's Ed Lavandera, who's on the scene. Ed, there was a whole caravan of vehicles that drove right past an area that had previously been closed, including SWAT. What have you been seeing? Oh, wait, I'm hearing, he's reporting out there, he's talking. All right, let me tell you what I'm seeing. First of all, as we talk to Ed in a second.
Hey,
Ed, can you hear me?
Hey, Laura, apologies. We were trying to kind of figure out some things to do here to get some better reporting for you tonight. But right now, as I think you guys watched on camera just a short while ago, you saw a long line of vehicles. Some of those trucks from the Sheriff's Department had forensic teams going in. It was a really long line of cars, more than a dozen cars that went in. And a lot of those vehicles and those types of trucks that Pima County has, we have seen at some other locations and some other scenes where they have been collecting evidence and that sort of thing. So clearly that kind of work is going on here tonight. And we should also point out, and I think you might have mentioned this a little while ago, but bears repeating, is that Pima County authorities say that there will be no press conference tonight, but that they will issue a written statement. So, you know, you can kind of parse what you will from that. Ultimately, what it means, I think, will be at least some sort of clarity and update on exactly what was found here. Now, how much clarity we get on the reasons and what brought them here, what kind of investigative leads brought them here is not exactly clear. But we do know that there have been tens of thousands of tips that have been called in to investigators in the last few days, especially after the video was released of the front doorbell camera and that haunting images of the suspect approaching Nancy Guthrie's front door. And that has triggered an avalanche of tips for investigators. We've been told that they've been pouring through those as much as possible. And obviously they've been prioritizing those that they think are the best quality tips. They've been prioritizing that and going after that. But what remains just really striking about this particular scene is that this is all happening within the same neighborhood of Nancy Guthrie. Remember, we've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how this suspect got into the neighborhood, got out of the neighborhood. And I don't want to suggest in any way that this is whatever is happening here leads us to the person. I don't want to get that far ahead of ourselves, but if you will, kind of, this is the back of my phone, kind of imagine this neighborhood that Nancy Guthrie lives in is almost like a rectangle. There are 4 major intersections around here, so we've spent a lot of time kind of trying to figure out how, the roads are so windy, it's kind of like a spider web. You have to be pretty knowledgeable of the area, or at least have studied it to kind of figure out how to get to her home. And that's what's been so perplexing about all of this, is like, how does someone reach this particular home if you didn't have a reason to be on the street where she lives? So, it's what's really striking at this moment as we watch all of this unfold, just a few roads away from where she lives.
Ed Lavendera, I'm going to stick with you. Come back to me when you have something. I know you were reporting and you're trying to get more information. I want to tell our audience what we know so far, okay? So tonight we have seen an increase of police activity. Remember, earlier in the week, you had law enforcement who executed a search warrant, detained somebody from a vehicle 50 miles south of this area, in an area called Rio Rico. We know that person was questioned over several hours, was ultimately released as well. We know there's been thousands of tips coming in. There's been a lot of activity trying to figure out whether surveillance footage was captured from different homes in the area, including the intersections that Ed Lavendera rightly pointed out. Now we are 2 miles away from Nancy Guthrie's home. We've learned from a neighbor just moments ago, this is a residential area, that this is an area where the homes are not very close together. The Catalina Hills, they're more spread out. This topography has been a challenge already. Within that same 2-mile radius, we're learning, or a 2-mile radius of the home, a glove was found. It has been sent down to Florida to be processed. I spoke to a woman who is very familiar with the lab that they chose as opposed to Quantico, did not question the effectiveness of that lab. And of course, there are questions about what that DNA would ultimately reveal. And now, just moments ago, we saw a caravan of over a dozen vehicles where there's no access points for the media to go. We're talking about SWAT, forensics, and other vans as well that were in the area that's residential. This is striking because up till now, the sheriff and the sheriff's office has been criticized about having the crime scene, his words, of Nancy Guthrie's home opened up reopened. The media, different people who were influencers, others, including pool cleaners, able to go on the premises. Now within 2 miles, they're looking at this area. I want to go back to a retired FBI special agent, Michael Harrigan, as well as an FBI counterintelligence operative, Eric O'Neill, to help me break this down, because this is very significant. Describe for people who are watching that caravan and people going through. Begin with the SWAT team. To have a SWAT team on location, what does that tell you about what type of situation they may have expected to confront, even in a residential area?
Yes, certainly. So whether this is a serious situation or not, whether it becomes something that's a major break in the case or not, the FBI and the Sheriff's Department are taking it very seriously. They close off the street, and you close off the street because you want to isolate the situation. You don't want citizens to come through in cars. You know that it is potentially dangerous, and so you send in SWAT. And SWAT are the experts. They know how to handle a hostile situation and control the situation as well.
And we don't know if they are identifying a suspect in that area. We don't have a lot of daylight into what's beyond that barrier. But we do know from the video that the person who they are calling a suspect is armed. There were questions about whether that person was familiar with having a weapon, the type of holster, the placement of it in the waistband suggested to some firearms experts this person did not have a facility with guns, otherwise they wouldn't place it in a precarious position. But the fact that SWAT is involved, to his larger point, and they are normally confronting dangerous situations, you were a member of SWAT. What would you have been trained to do in an area like this?
Well, I think what you're seeing here, Laura, is that the SWAT was there first. So normally what will happen is SWAT will make entry into a residence or into a building or actually affect the detention of someone, a suspect.
And this is local law enforcement versus the FBI? Who has SWAT?
It would be the same.
Got it.
It would be the same. And I was on both a local and a federal SWAT team. And they operate on the same principles.
But they come in first.
They come in first, they breach a residence, they go in, they secure it, and then...
What does that mean, secure it, though? Are they going room to room? What are they doing?
It depends on the nature of the search warrant that they have, but normally they'll go in. When they secure it, if it's an armed and dangerous person, like you astutely pointed out that the individual seen on camera had a firearm. So you have to assume that everybody that is a suspect is going to be armed. So they're going to go in, they're going to breach the residence, potentially, if that's what they're doing. And then they go room to room, make sure there's nobody there. Or if they're after somebody particularly, they'll go ahead and detain them, hold them there, and then the forensics and the investigators will come in right behind them, and the investigators will be the ones then they pass off the detained person to, who will do the interview, do the handling of the person.
We actually see some from local news. There's a drone footage showing over 24 or more presence of law enforcement in the area. This is not just a small amount of police activity happening. I mean, we're showing you live pictures and views right now. You see somebody with a truck and a couple cones. What's beyond that barrier is far different. It is very significant. So walk me through, you secured the area, you delivered the person, now what's happening?
Well, now the forensic team comes in. So there was a tip, or there could be a dozen different ways that they decided that they're going to move in the situation, which is probably a residence. It's a very residential area. It's probably not the side of the road. It's probably a residence. And if you remember what happened in the prior HRT, Hostage Rescue Team, SWAT action against the delivery driver, I mean, they came in through the back and the front, broke those doors, which, you know, someone's going to have to pay for. And it turned out he had an alibi. But so they're taking it incredibly seriously. Now,
so no warrant would be needed for when you have a SWAT team coming in. This is exigent enough that the warrant situation is not the issue any longer.
Yeah, you have to have a warrant.
Yes.
Okay, but even if a SWAT team is called,
yes, you have the warrant. So either they're looking for something or a person, and they detain the person or they control the person, and then the forensics will come in on a warrant to search for something. Now,
so
we don't
forensics, though, okay, let's break this down, because when people think about forensics, they might think to themselves, okay, I've got some fingerprints, I have to go to the lab, I have DNA I want to put over. It might not occur to them that there is an immediacy or an urgency of having a forensic truck come in. What exactly is their role? It's not purely sort of research-based. It's it's proactively accumulating and acquiring evidence from the scene, right?
So they could be searching for something or they could be retrieving something, right? And so we don't know which. Or maybe it's a person of interest and they're going to go see what they can find. But they're the specialists who can look over a crime scene without disturbing evidence, who collect evidence and do it all legally so that it can be used in the future. When you say not disturbing evidence, that's probably a daunting proposition, not knowing what you're looking for. Well, they're able to go through and catalog, so maybe they find that backpack, right? And so what you bring up, it's disturbing evidence. What I mean there is you close a crime scene, then you open the crime scene, then you close the crime scene, and all.
Nancy Guthrie is now nearing the 2-week mark. Her neighbors in Tucson are continuing to rally in support of her safe return. A Tucson news station where Savannah Guthrie had one of her first journalism jobs put up a massive banner reading, "Bring her home." There's also a memorial of candles, roses, ribbons outside of her home. Of course, as you can see here, it's teeming with yellow, which represents hope. As the Guthrie family is so anxiously awaiting answers, my next guest understands their anguish and pain all too well. Ed Smart's daughter, Elizabeth, was kidnapped from her Utah home in 2002 when she was just 14 years old. She was held captive for 9 months before police were able to rescue her and reunite her with her family. And Ed joins me now. And Ed, I'm just so grateful to have you here because I can't even imagine the memories, awful memories this brings back for you and your family. I wonder, though, given your rare perspective, what you make of what you've seen and heard in the circumstances of this case, as everyone is just, heartbroken for what the Guthrie family is going through tonight.
I'm sure that they are in survival mode at the moment. There are so many ups and downs during the course of the investigation and, moments of hope. And you get to a point where you try to protect yourself from that roller coaster because the ups are wonderful, the downs are really bad. And so the roller coaster of emotion is really a difficult thing to deal with. I'm hoping that they're really taking care of themselves, getting enough rest. I went on an antidepressant during mine initially, and it just affected me. It just made me go crazy. So I'm hoping that they're, really taking care of themselves. I think hope is such an important thing to have at this point. In so many cases, the majority of cases, an abduction occurs within a 25-mile radius of the home, and so I feel like there's still a very good chance that she's around, and I'm certainly hoping for the best for their family.
Yeah, we're all praying for that every single day, and saying anyone who has information should call in. I wonder what you make of what it's like of this happening now in this day and age, because one thing someone was saying to me the other day is there's got to be just a surplus of footage of Ring cameras, Nest cameras that people have so commonly on their homes these days to show a car driving by or hopefully some kind of investigative clue. Compared to what this moment was like for you and your family in 2002?
I think back at our time, ours was the first Amber Alert to go out in Utah, and there were, things that law enforcement tried to do, but, most law enforcement agencies are not equipped to deal with an abduction. It's usually something that happens very rarely, so they're not prepared. And I'm glad to see that the FBI seems to be working together. I think that is really critical to have all the law enforcement agencies come to bear on this case because they need everyone, and to not have everyone on the same page is very difficult for the family. To hear that the community is supporting the Guthries, I think, is a huge point of importance. It's not only keeping your eyes out, but also being there. Lois and I had, when we would go down and we would see all these people that were volunteering, it gave us the greatest hope that Elizabeth would be found and she would be brought home. And I'm sure seeing the support that they have garnered gives them great hope. And I'm just hoping that things move forward and this comes to an end for the family.
Being in the Tucson area, not far from this, where all of this is happening, I wonder what that's like for you and in this moment.
You know, I mean, I'm glad to be here. I've tried to be of help, and it's not a big issue for me. I mean, certainly I might double check the doors a little bit more than usual, but it's I think to have an abduction of this sort, I'm just blown away that anyone would think of taking an elderly woman, and certainly one that's in her condition. Elizabeth was in fairly good health, but your mind focuses on what could they be going through? How are they surviving? You know, why did the captors do this? All of those questions just keep going over and over in your mind, and many sleepless nights. So I'm really hoping their families doing something to help themselves on that.
Day 13 in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, and the sheriff is saying they are working hard, his words, to reunite her with her family. Tomorrow night marks 2 full weeks since she vanished from her home outside Tucson, not long after an armed man with a backpack was seen on her doorbell camera. Her daughter Savannah, of course, as you know, taking time away from NBC's Today Show to be closer to the investigation at home, and as seen as Brian Stelter reports, her NBC family is following along and right there with her.
New developments in the disappearance of Savannah's mom.
In the long and dramatic history of morning TV, there's never been a crisis like this.
Good Monday morning with all eyes on Arizona.
All week long.
Good Friday morning, key new developments in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
For the second week in a row, the Today Show led every day with the search for Savannah Guthrie's mom.
Hoda with us again while Savannah remains with her family in Arizona.
And that is where we begin.
Former co-host Hoda Kotb now back on the show and filling in for Savannah as the show takes things one day at a time, according to an NBC source.
You know what, Craig? We always talk about our show as a family. We are a family. Yes. I'm part of the family. I'm happy to be with you because we show up for each other. So
yes.
And Nancy has been an extended member of the Today family since she had visited Savannah on air many times.
My kids are absolutely amazing. So
they sure are absolutely amazing.
Love you, Mama.
Now, Savannah's fans waking up every morning hoping to hear about a breakthrough, but instead hearing things like this.
A man who says that he was the one that was detained last night has now come out and told reporters that he has been released.
During the Olympics, Today normally relocates to the host city. In fact, Savannah was getting ready to fly to Milan when she learned Nancy was missing. NBC decided to keep the entire show stateside.
For all of us who just have gotten to know her and love her, it is personal. You know?
This week, the tears have dried, and the segments are more sober, addressing the challenges of the investigation, while noting that Savannah says she will never give up looking for her mom.
And of course, our hearts continue to be with Savannah and her family, Craig.
Indeed, indeed they do.
It really has been a remarkable balancing act by the Today Show, with staffers covering a story that is so personal and so disorienting. Earlier this week, with Savannah still in Arizona, Savannah's husband visited the Today Show team at 30 Rock. I'm told he thanked the staff for continuing to cover the case so thoroughly and for keeping the tip line phone numbers out there in public view. You know, in morning TV, the stars are encouraged to share their families, to share their personal lives on air. But now, some in the industry can't help but wonder if that openness, if that accessibility might have put the Guthrie family at more risk. It is just one of many questions, many unknowns relating to this awful story.
Yeah.
Anderson?
Well, our thoughts are certainly with Savannah and her entire family. Brian, thank you very much. That's it for us. I hope you have a good weekend. The news continues. The Source with Caitlin Collins starts now.
Tonight, an update in the search for Nancy Guthrie as investigators now have DNA evidence in their possession. I'm Caitlin Collins, and this is The Source. Tonight, there's been a surge of investigative leads, but none so far have led authorities to 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie or the individual or individuals who abducted her from her home 2 weeks ago tomorrow night. The Pima County Sheriff's Office and the sheriff himself spoke with CNN's Ed LIVE-N18L in what was actually his first on-camera update in more than a week, where he revealed that investigators are actively chasing 30,000 leads to find Nancy Guthrie, at least one of which might be critical tonight.
The DNA tests that have been done, has anything come back and pointed
Yes.
toward anyone in particular?
Well, no, we have DNA. So trust me, if we knew who it was, we'd be on it. But we do have some DNA, and we'll continue to work with those, with the lab, on that DNA analysis.
Is that DNA that you have, you believe, might be the suspects? It just doesn't match anyone in a lab, or?
What we have is we have some DNA, and we don't know whose it is. So we'll keep looking.
They are going to keep looking, as the sheriff said there. His office says that DNA was collected from Nancy Guthrie's property. It does not match Nancy Guthrie or her family or anyone else who had been in close contact with her. They would not say exactly where that DNA was recovered, but the sheriff said more about where other potential evidence was found.
There's never been a glove found at that home, in that home, or around that home. This glove was found the other day, and it was found by a search team that's their job, is to go out and search that area and expand that search. But it was 2 miles away from the house, and it was a tip, it was a lead. We're not going to just dismiss that lead. You call us, you tell us, we're going to go out and we're going to take it seriously. And that evidence is processed. Today, we've gone out 5-10 miles because we found a glove. Everybody's finding gloves. We've got gloves 10 miles out. I can't dismiss that.
It's still not confirmed if any of those gloves are the same ones that were worn by the armed individual that you see here, the suspect at Nancy Guthrie's front door the night that she was taken from her home. And as this search is now about to enter its third week, there are still so many unknowns tonight.
How many hours of video do you have at this moment?
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
Have you been able to figure out what route the suspect drove through the neighborhood to get to Nancy Guthrie's house?
No. All those things and possibilities are looked at, but yeah, I couldn't tell you.
Do you believe that the suspect's car has been captured on some video that you have?
We hope so, but we don't know that.
Do you think the suspect acted alone?
Oh, look, you have the video in front of you that I have.
Right.
That's all I can say.
That's all you have.
And as President Trump was leaving the White House to head to North Carolina today, he was asked by reporters about this case after he weighed in about a week ago and who it is that is taking the lead on this investigation.
Why hasn't the FBI taken over the Nancy Guthrie case as the lead investigator? Do you have any updates on how that's going?
Well, they took it over originally. You know, it was a local case originally, and they didn't want to let go of it, which is fine. It's up to them. It's really up to the community. But ultimately, when the FBI got involved, I think, progress has been made.
And CNN's Ed LIVE-N18L joins me now from Tucson. And Ed, obviously, you were asking all the right questions, all the questions that everyone has about this case to the sheriff earlier. What else did he tell you about the state of this investigation?
Well, one of the reasons I think the sheriff came out and spoke today is because of these reports suggesting that his office had withheld key evidence from the FBI, specifically that DNA evidence, and the sheriff really strongly pushing back on all of that. We've heard from one source who confirmed the reports of the withholding evidence. We also heard from another source who said that all of these stories were simply overblown in this situation. But the sheriff insists that from the very beginning, FBI agents have been working alongside sheriff's deputies in this investigation, and we asked him more about that today.
The story that, well, the FBI wasn't plugged in right away. They were plugged in right away that morning. We knew what their capabilities were. Why? Because we've always worked with them. We have people assigned, way before this case, we've had people assigned to work at their office, at their building. And that's been for years. And it's because we have a good working relationship. We are going to work this case as a team with our partners. There is no egos. Nobody's the lead. It is find Nancy.
So, Caitlin, you know, we really wanted to kind of keep the focus on what is ultimately the most important thing here, and that is finding Nancy Guthrie. And he did say that because of the video that was released several days ago of this suspect at that front door, it's generated, as you mentioned off the top, tens of thousands of leads. And the sheriff did say that they have some good ones to go on there, but they continue to work all that, and it's not clear how close they are. We really couldn't get any clear indication or kind of a peek into just how close they might be to finding where she might be, and more importantly, who the suspect is in this case.
Yeah. Ed Lavandera, appreciate that interview and at least trying to ask these questions, finding out what they do know with the authorities over there. My legal and investigative sources are also here tonight to help break all of this down, what you heard from the sheriff there. Joey Jackson, criminal defense attorney, Ellie Honig, former federal prosecutor, and of course, John Miller, our chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst. John, what else do you make of what not only we heard from the sheriff there, but how this is playing out today and what we've heard from today?
Well, having DNA collected from people who have a reason to be there, people who are expected to be there around the house, family members, maintenance workers, gives you a good bank to start with elimination. Having DNA from an unknown subject, that's another plus, which is you run it through CODIS. Obviously, it's not a hit or they would have a name. But if you get a suspect, now you have something to compare against them, especially if it's a suspect who said, I never touched that or I was never in that house. As far as this, who should be the lead investigator? This is right now a state violation, not a federal crime. This is a case where the FBI is there for the express purpose of assisting local law enforcement. And until the moment comes where they say these kidnappers crossed state lines or took the victim across state lines, when it becomes a federal crime, the sheriff's office is technically in the lead. Now, that doesn't mean anything. The FBI is bringing everything they have, and the sheriff is bringing everything they have. And there'll always be discussions about where certain evidence should go or being handled. But I don't see any split or divide there.
So these reports, in case people have seen them, you're not reading too much into the question the president was asked about the division of FBI or state or
Right.
who's kind of running
The sheriff said it very well. We're running it together, and they are. And I've spoken to people on the FBI side and said, how's that going? And they've said it's going fine. There's always these things. I've been in these investigations where we've had these disagreements. You work through them. But it's not a thing where there's some divide that's affecting the case going forward.
Yeah, and Ellie, I know you're familiar with how the DNA databases kind of work. I mean, there's not just one grand database that has everyone's DNA, obviously. How does that work in terms of this? Because Nancy Guthrie lived in this house for a long time. I think people might hear that and say, oh, well, they've got DNA, but we don't really know exactly who it could be.
Yeah, so we learned a lot of really important information just now. The fact that they have recovered DNA in the house that they don't know whose it is, so it's not Nancy Guthrie's, it's not some other known person, is really significant. Now, the first thing you're going to do, John referenced CODIS. That is the combined DNA system for across the country. And what it does is it brings together all 50 states' DNA database. Now, who's in there? Mostly arrestees. There are laws in most states saying if you're arrested for certain crimes, violent crimes, you have to get DNA swabbed on the way in. You also can put yourself in there voluntarily, put a child in there for security reasons. There's about 25 million or so profiles in CODIS, in that system. So that's a lot, but it's also less than 10% of the entire population. The other thing that law enforcement can do, and John, I don't know if they've done this, is there are genealogy companies out there that are very popular, right? 23andMe and others. They have different policies as to whether they will share your DNA or not, but law enforcement has made cases through those companies. And then finally, if they get a suspect, you're going to want a DNA sample. Now, you can ask for a voluntary sample, but if the person declines, you go get a search warrant and you force them. And again, it's a internal cheek swab. So there's still important steps that they have to run down to figure out if that DNA sample is a hit with anybody. Oh, the other thing, now we have the ability to do it by family relations. So you might be able to say, this is not a direct hit, but we know that this is the son of the person who's in the database or the brother. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what happens, though, Joey, if they're not in any database?
So then you have a problem. I think there's a couple of things that are significant. And when you talk about DNA, it's search warrants, obviously, those are very important. But a lot of times, and, John, Ellie knows this too, Police, law enforcement will sit on a location, right? There are things, there are trash, there are other things where you could obtain DNA. So it's not necessarily, you know, that you get it the
Like if someone
other
threw
way.
away a piece of trash, they can pick it up.
Very important, right? Or they'll say, hey, you know, have some coffee or have some water, and they'll get it that way. But DNA, obviously critical. CSI Miami, it's the, you know, coup de grace, what you are going to determine and detect who it is. But surveillance is very important too, right? That's why there was a request made for accompanying really locations, neighbors, et cetera, to submit. Look at those Ring doorbells, because you can get the surveillance video and determine from the surveillance video who it might be. Additionally, remember we talked about that backpack. Remember when we had Stephen Moore here, he was talking about, hey, there are these barcodes, and the barcodes are going to reflect, did you get it at Walmart? Did you get it from Amazon? How did you actually get this? And then you could identify that to the specific store. You look at the surveillance video and bingo, there's the individual that's there. So DNA, very important, but there are other measures which are significant, and I think that surveillance that they're asking for, very important.
If I can just add to that, you'd be amazed what manufacturers can track. I had a case once where someone had put the remains of a person in a garbage bag, a big black garbage bag, and we figured out, I forget what company, Hefty or something. They were able to tell us where that lot was shipped to. So you can do a lot with information like that about the backpack.
What do you mean where the lot was shipped to?
In other words, what
was
location?
Produced, where it was sold?
Yeah, that lot was in a shipment that went to somewhere in central Jersey, which was around the area where you expected it to be.
Yeah, but I mean, the biggest thing that we've gotten this week were the pictures of this person at Nancy Guthrie's door. I know that they've said Google and Nest are trying to recover anything else they can from other cameras at her house.
So that's a big deal.
Is that likely? What do you think?
So
how are you reading into that?
Most households that have a Nest system are not limited to one camera at the door. There's going to be a camera inside the garage or outside the garage, one attached to maybe that floodlight. There may be interior cameras. The same techniques that they use to unearth this deleted material, which wasn't supposed to be saved, it was just supposed to be recorded over. If they can apply that to other cameras, they can learn, first of all, we may see inside the house during the crime. That's one possibility. You may see whether a second offender was let in from the back or another entrance. That's another possibility. You may see if somebody sneezed on something, touched something, removed a glove. There may be other opportunities from that to recover other DNA or evidence inside. And we may not ever see that picture unless the authorities determine there's something in here that people could recognize. If it's just more stuff of the same guy in the same mask, maybe not. But the idea that it was recovered in this case and more could be recovered from the other sensors could be really important.
Yeah, I mean, the sheriff seemed to kind of downplay the gloves. I mean, it's hard to read into it. He was just saying we have a lot of stuff that we're looking through, but he was saying some of these gloves were found 2 miles away. Some were being called about were found 10 miles away. I mean, that's one question, I think, in terms of how significant that was in terms of how we saw it yesterday.
I think so, Caitlin. I think a couple of things, right? The first thing is you manage expectations. Certainly gloves, the finding of them, very significant, very relevant, right? John Miller has talked about how they broaden the investigation to look at other places and what they can unearth. Now, are those gloves related in any way? Well, that's going to be determined because they'll do the DNA analysis and they'll say, hey, there's either going to be a determination made that they're connected or they're not. So I think a lot of that is managing expectations, but you know, gloves are critical and could be a very critical source of information in the event that, you know, they're tested, which they are, and that they reveal other information.
Ed Levendure did a great job in that interview.
He had so many good questions that I think are all the questions that we want to know.
Absolutely, but I'm going to be a little bit critical of the sheriff here. I don't like the sheriff saying, essentially, we know nothing about the vehicle. We know nothing about various things, because then whoever did this may get a sense of complacency, a sense of, okay, I don't need to do anything. There's a technique called churning the water sometimes, right? You go out there and you hope that somebody gets panicky and jumpy, maybe does something, maybe tries something, maybe someone turns them in. But if someone's watching this and saying, you can easily watch that interview and conclude there's a lot they don't know, you're more likely to just sit tight and hope it blows. It's not going to blow over, but just sit tight and not make a scene. So I don't love that technique by the sheriff.
What do you think, John?
I think it cuts both ways. I think if you get a tip about the vehicle and the person thinks, I don't need to dump this car, they don't know anything about it, that works in your favor. It's just these investigations ebb and flow and can turn on a dime. You can wake up Monday morning with nothing and at 1:45 p.m. get the clue that tips the whole thing. or it can be a long, torturous process where one leads to another, and the picture comes together. They go the way they go.
Yeah.
Believe she'll be found. And I believe that we are working as hard as we can to do that as fast as we can. Sometimes it just doesn't work that way, but we are working hard.
The Pima County Sheriff this afternoon on the nearly 2-week search for Nancy Guthrie in an interview with CNN's Ed Lavandera. The sheriff also saying that Google is working to see if they can get any more video from the cameras around Guthrie's home in Tucson, Arizona. Joining us now is a longtime friend and colleague of Mrs. Guthrie's, Jacqueline Sharkey. Jacqueline, I appreciate you joining us, and I'm so sorry we are talking under these circumstances. You said that Mrs. Guthrie really is an integral part of the community. Can you just talk about what your work together has been like?
Yes, Nancy is one of those quiet leaders in a community, part of the fabric of the community. Every organization that she belonged to, every issue that she embraced, she was the person who was insightful, strategic, organized people, organized information, got out effective messages. So when we hear about this, everyone who's worked with Nancy, who's known Nancy, who's shared her faith in her church, feels this tremendous tear in the fabric of the community.
I understand Savannah Guthrie was a student in your journalism class at the University of Arizona, and that's how you first met Mrs. Guthrie, is that right?
That's correct. I first met Nancy because Savannah was a student in our classes. And later, when I became director of the journalism school, she became part of our Journalism Advisory Council, which is made up of alumni and colleagues who help with curriculum development and community outreach, fundraising, that sort of thing. Nancy was a very important part of that group. We leaned on her for guidance. We leaned on her for her diverse perspectives and viewpoints, for the depth of her knowledge about journalism and about education. And she drove many of the most successful initiatives that we had. And I also worked with Nancy on another very important community initiative that very few people know about, because Nancy regarded her role as being in the background, supporting people, guiding people, but the focus was never on herself. Back in the mid-90s, the University of Arizona was going to close the Poison Information Center hotline, the hotline that people all over Southern Arizona would call if they ingested something that was toxic, if their children inhaled something that was poisonous. The university was going to close that because of budget cuts. I learned about that, and I gathered a very small group of people. Nancy was the central person in that group. She helped us gather data. She helped us do brochures. She helped us with public relations releases. This is way before the internet. I mean, back in those days, in the mid-90s, there were no social media. There was no internet.
Were you able to get that turned around?
We did. With Nancy's help, we designed brochures, petitions, got 20,000 signatures, took them to the governor's office, and the decision to close the center was reversed. That center is still open today. And the thousands of people...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say the thousands of people who've called into that center in the 30 years since it's been saved, they owe a huge debt to Nancy Guthrie.
When you heard about her disappearance, what went through your mind? I mean, you're a journalist, a journalism professor, and yet you know her so well.
When I first learned about this, I was heartbroken. For Nancy, for Savannah, for every member of her family. Because if everything works out perfectly and she comes home as soon as possible, the stress and the trauma is so heart-wrenching. And to see this family and to think about Nancy going through this ordeal, when she is a person who was such a role model to so many of us. When I think of Nancy, I think of someone who lives a life based on values. She was devoted to her faith. She was devoted to the truth. She was devoted to justice. She was devoted to kindness. And our hope is that when Nancy comes back, she can continue to show us how to live a life that's meaningful. So we're hoping she comes back as soon as possible, because there's this phrase in the Bible that says, you know, Jesus said, by your deeds you shall know them. And by Nancy's deeds, that's how we know her.
Well, thank you for tonight with the search for Nancy Guthrie. Tomorrow night marks 2 full weeks since she vanished from her home outside Tucson. 2 weeks. Today, the local sheriff delivered what could be significant news.
We have DNA. So trust me, if we knew who it was, we'd be on it. But we do have some DNA, and we're continue to work with the lab on that DNA analysis.
Well, the sheriff did not say where the DNA was found, did tell CNN's Ed Lavandera that the investigators also have DNA from Ms. Guthrie, her family, her landscapers, and housekeepers. Now, on the question of gloves, he said that several have been recovered as far as 10 miles from the Guthrie home. They're being checked for DNA and presumably any connection to the crime scene. Also today, pool workers were spotted at the Guthrie home, which initially drew interest. The pool service later said their visit was for routine maintenance. CNN's Nick Watt joins us now from Tucson. Nick?
Well, Anderson, 2 major strands in this investigation, the DNA, as you just discussed, and also the video. Investigators want more video. So today we took a look at where that might come from. That haunting doorbell cam footage of the suspect gave investigators a physical description. What about his vehicle? Investigators have put out a call for video of anything suspicious within this 2-mile radius around Nancy Guthrie's home. My colleague Ed Lavandera just interviewed the sheriff.
And do you believe that the suspect's car has been captured on some video that you have?
We hope so, but we don't know that. We are still piecing together all those leads.
A lot of these houses around here do have security cameras, but local zoning laws mean every house has got to be at least 30 feet back from the road, and there's a lot of vegetation. So it's unclear what those cameras might have picked up. Also, there are no street lights here, and also multiple ways in and out of this neighborhood.
Have you been able to figure out what route the suspect drove through the neighborhood to get to Nancy Guthrie's house?
No, no. All those things and possibilities are looked at, but yeah, I couldn't tell you.
There are some traffic cameras operated by the county on the more major roads that surround Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood, but the county says they're not available at all intersections and not always archived. So in addition to those cameras run by the county, there are also cameras run by the state and the city of Tucson. Could have been an option. Here's the issue. About 10 years ago, the people of Tucson voted to outlaw the use of traffic cameras for red light infractions or speeding. So this camera here on a major road just a few miles from Nancy Guthrie's house, it only monitors traffic conditions. It doesn't record. So nothing on tape from the night Nancy Guthrie was taken.
If you have any information, whether it's from your Ring camera or it's just you've seen something that is of concern to you, please share it with us.
Nick is back. Nick, what's the latest on any law enforcement activity near the home or surrounding areas?
I mean, today, Anderson, it was just the sheriff department supervising those pool maintenance workers and making sure that no one enters the crime scene. But we have heard that they are working now on other cameras that were inside that home. Now, you remember that porch camera? It took engineers a long time to extract that video. They are now trying to do the same with other cameras that were inside the home. The sheriff said they're working on it. They don't know if they'll be able to get it, but the sheriff certainly hopes that they can. That might give, I don't know, a vehicle, another angle of the suspect, maybe an accomplice, whatever. They want to try and get that video if they possibly can, and they hope it'll come through. Anderson.
All right. Nick Watt. Nick, thanks very much. We're joined now by our law enforcement team, former NYPD Detective David Cerny, CNN Chief Law Enforcement Intelligence Analyst John Miller, and former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. John, you heard the sheriff say the DNA has been found, not clear who it belongs to. Why does it, I mean, why does DNA take often so long?
Well, it's a it's a lengthy process, and there's always somewhat of a backlog. Now, this case is going to be getting top priority in likely the private lab the sheriff uses, certainly at the FBI at Quantico, because it's a kidnap for ransom case, which puts it ahead of other unsolved crimes because there's a victim, at bay here. But it's significant in that they have a set of known contributors, people who are in and out of the house that they can document that belong there.
And that they can quickly check it against.
Exactly, which they can run those people against their own DNA. In this case, you have an unknown contributor, which is significant, potentially. You can run it against CODIS. Have they been arrested for a felony? Have they been in prison? That will pop in the national database, but it hasn't. So now what you have is, you have an unknown contributor where if you get a suspect, you have something to run against that suspect, particularly if the suspect says, I was never on that road, I never wore that glove, I was never in that house, depending on where it was found. It could be useful, it could be nothing.
And Andrew, I mean, does the FBI have other databases besides people with prior criminal records that they could run through?
The basic law enforcement database is what John just referred to as CODIS. There's also ways to do what we call rapid DNA. So they can do the processing of the sample pretty quickly, but you're held up at the point where you don't have an existing sample in that data set. There is some work that cold case squads and other investigators have done with commercially available DNA data sets. It's not clear to me whether or not they are going to rely on those data sets here. That's a very different approach. You would take your unknown sample and run it against the samples contained in that commercial data set to see if there are relatives, people who are connected to the same DNA in that data set. And if there are, then you have to do some genealogy research to try to figure out who your unknown person is. But again, it's not clear to me that that's happening in this case yet.
So, David, when the authorities say they have DNA that's different from Nancy Guthrie's and from the other known people, does that give you a lot of confidence that may lead to something, or could there just be other people who were in the house that nobody knew about?
And that's the thing. You have to, when you talk about DNA and recovery of it, where the location of the DNA is recovered. And not only that, you've done the elimination. If you have elimination from, like we would do fingerprints, elimination prints from the family, that's fine. But what you have to do now is, we had responding officers to that scene. Where were they at in that house at the time? And is the DNA that's recovered in the area where they've been at? So that's another thing. I don't know if they've done an elimination DNA on substrates on the responding officers, anybody else in the house, because that's what you have to really look at is, could it be a contributor that was there as law enforcement? And not only that, you're still going to have to find out through the analysis. We have DNA. Is it a mixture? Do we and matches come through CODIS? Is it match which is no one known, no names, but a hit would be a name to a name. So in other words, if they got DNA and they tested it, analyzed it, and they found it matched someone with no name, that's something different. But when you get the hit, that means you have a definitive name of the person.
And John, I mean, the FBI they're looking at potential, obviously any potential leads. There's this other doorbell camera video from a house roughly 6.5 miles away from Ms. Guthrie's. Mrs. Guthrie's. We're seen as blurring the man's face. We don't know who this is or if it's anything nefarious. It shows someone holding some items of clothing, bending over. It's from January 23rd, which is not a date authorities have cited as necessarily important. What would authorities do with something like this?
Well, what you're looking for is, and I mean, when you're working on a case like this, you're doing everything at once. You're focused on what about those ransom notes, what about these other letters, but you're also focused on residential burglaries, home invasions. One of the things they asked the public to say is, check your cameras and see, did anybody approach your door? Is this somebody who has been targeting houses in the neighborhood? Could this case be very different?
I mean, it certainly looks like potentially suspicious.
Right, and I mean, in a case like this, you could have somebody who is contemplating a burglary, trying to avoid that camera. At a case like this, you could also have somebody who's looking for those Amazon packages that people go on at front doors and take. It's one of the main things that Ring doorbell cameras are really good at catching. But it's good that people found it. It's good that they posted it. It's good that law enforcement is looking at it.
Andrew, the sheriff said that his department, the FBI, are joined at the hip. He also denied reports that he blocked the FBI from accessing key evidence. When two law enforcement entities are investigating a case like this, I mean, who takes the lead? Who's in the lead right now? Who's running this?
Yeah, I think, I think as a result of years and years of watching, these things on television, people have a sense that there's always conflict between the feds and the locals. It's really not the case. And particularly in the post 9/11 world, our relationships have gotten so deep and so consistent over the years because of the task forces. We bring local officers into the FBI, we deputize them as federal marshals, we work together. We all have the same legal authorities, things like that. So I have no doubt that the Sheriff's Department has worked and is working closely with the FBI, and there's no animosity there. Where you have problems is when communication isn't very clear, or logistically something happens in an awkward way that shouldn't have happened, unintentional, but maybe evidence sits in one place when it should be analyzed someplace else. That could have happened here. That's pretty standard. At the end of the day, I think it'll be fair to look back at both entities, both the Sheriff's Department and the FBI, to look at like the urgency of the response. How quickly did they call in the FBI and all their resources? Was it a couple of hours? Was it half a day? Was it a day or several days? And there may be lessons to be learned in the aftermath. But right now, everybody's very focused on getting Ms. Guthrie back, and that's absolutely what they should be thinking about.
We have more breaking developments in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. The Pima County Sheriff telling CNN this afternoon this door cam video has triggered the greatest number of leads for investigators. He says they got about 5,000 tips within just hours of releasing it on Tuesday. Tonight, almost 2 weeks into the search, still there is no sign of the 84-year-old mom, and the sheriff is disputing reports of any conflicts with the FBI over the investigation. More on that tonight from CNN's Brian Todd.
The Pima County Sheriff, in denying reports that he blocked the FBI from accessing key evidence in the Nancy Guthrie case, is also denying in an interview with CNN that there's any tension between his office and the FBI.
The FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Department are joined at the hips. We have done this for, not years, decades.
Two law enforcement veterans tell CNN, even if there's little to no tension between the Sheriff's Office and the FBI, make no mistake, as this case nears its third week with no signs of Nancy Guthrie, her alleged abductor not identified, and the media scrutiny unrelenting, the law enforcement teams in Arizona are feeling the heat.
There's enormous pressure whenever you have a case like this, especially when it's not quickly resolved.
Charles Ramsey was the D.C. police chief during the D.C. sniper case in 2002 and was part of the task force hunting the suspects. The case dragged on for more than 3 weeks. 10 people were killed. Then Montgomery County, Maryland Police Chief Charles Moose was the official leading the investigation and was its public face. The pressure on Moose as the hunt intensified was physically noticeable, especially when a child was shot and wounded.
But stepping over the line, shooting a kid, I guess it's getting to be really, really personal now.
I certainly can't speak for Chuck Moose, but you could see the stress, you could see the pressure, and everybody felt it, and I can only imagine what it had to be for him.
Former FBI Special Agent Steve Moore recalls one instance when tension inside a high-profile investigation he was involved in got personal.
I was thrown out of a police chief's office one day when it was the first FBI agent to arrive to assist in a kidnapping. Turns out that the kidnapping victim was his secretary, and he was personally offended that someone else would come in and try to help him solve the kidnapping of his own secretary. And I was forcefully asked to leave the building.
Fueling the tension in the Guthrie case, the celebrity factor. It's not just that a nationally renowned network anchor is at the center of it. The fact that President Trump has weighed in repeatedly, experts say, puts more pressure on investigators.
Ultimately, when the FBI got involved, I think, progress has been made.
When the President of the United States is involved in your case, you have entered a new level of hell.
How to deal with that pressure and the internal tension in a case like this? Both Charles Ramsey and Steve Moore say it's crucial for the leaders in the case to sit down and talk through whatever issues they have, and to keep all of that away from the on-the-ground investigators so they can focus on the job. Brian Todd, CNN, Washington.
Thanks, Brian. Back now with our panel, David Sarney, John Miller, Andrew McCabe. We're also joined by the retired FBI Special Agent and Crisis Negotiator Richard Kolko. John Miller, just in terms of the cooperation, just the lead agency on this case is which one, FBI or the local?
So the sheriff said, there's no lead agency, we're working together. The simple fact is that right now, this is a state violation, and the FBI is there assisting local law enforcement. Now, make no mistake, the FBI brings tremendous resources that can't be matched by any other agency to a case like this. But at the end of the day, until the FBI establishes, and this may or may not happen, that there was a kidnapping and that it crossed state lines and became a federal violation under the Lindbergh law, this is a state case. So they're working together fine, is my understanding. They've had discussions about where the DNA should go and which lab should do it. But those are normal discussions in a case like this.
Richard, your experience with the FBI, what's it like working with local law enforcement?
I think the rumors or stories that we've heard from the past are old, movies from the 50s. Every time that I was involved, we got along fine. Sometimes there were some territorial issues and evidence collection, procedures, processes, but it always got worked out. And I think one of the most important tasks of a special agent in charge of any field office is to develop and build those relationships with every local state police official there is. And you see them knocking on doors.
They're also clearly working with companies like Google on the cameras. David, you had mentioned the other night the idea of checking on Google Maps or Apple Maps any kind of ways for people who may have put in looking for the address of Nancy Guthrie.
Yeah, absolutely, because given the fact of the darkness of the area, you know, I do it when I go to Florida. I go to the same place every time I go to Florida, and I still have Waze on. And if you're dealing with a place that you've been even 1 or 2 times, you have to be there 10, 20 times. In the darkness of that area, is there a chance? And this is what you have to sometimes do. Sometimes you have to just spit out in the wind and something catches. This might be something that catches. We've run every gamut right now. You're looking at the video, you're getting backpacks identified and things like that. But now sometimes, I don't want to use outside the box, but looking at the tech issues that might be existing for the common man at this point, for someone who was just going out in the street, I don't know where I'm going, let me Google it, let me map it out some way. So is that a possibility? Yeah, it's a possibility.
Andrew, you know, as you know, they doubled the reward for information leading to the location of Nancy Guthrie or her captor or captors. Is that something that a family can make a determination of? Like, could the Guthrie family say, you know what, let's make it $500,000? Because we were talking the other day of, you know, the difference between 50,000 and 100,000, maybe at 100,000, that is starting to attract people who may actually have a knowledge because of, you know, their cousin is involved and they were asked to be involved and they decided not to, but $100,000 suddenly, you know, real money on the table.
Yeah, I don't know what the tipping point is there, right? And I think that the FBI looks at the reward system a little more holistically. It is primarily a driver of attention. So when you put a reward on a case in whatever aspect you're trying to incentivize, it draws eyes and ears to the story. It makes people think. It motivates lots of people to look around, and then you start getting tips. So just simply putting a significant reward on accomplishes that. Now, to start elevating the amount you're offering, you're trying to zero in on that. Like maybe there's somebody who's not going to do it at 50, but they would do it at 100. But honestly, there's not a lot of examples of that. There's not, you know, there's no hard data that says like we collect better tips at 100 than we do at 50. As far as the family is concerned, I mean, most families are not in a position to be putting their personal resources behind the reward offer, right? Most families in a situation like this are really scrambling to find money that they might use to pay a ransom. I think if a family offered to contribute their own reward in accordance with the FBI reward, they could certainly create the effect of increasing the value of the reward. That would not be a problem. But as a practical matter, I haven't really seen that happen because, as I said, most families are very focused on the ransom factor.
This case has obviously attracted a lot of interest online. You have a lot of social media, you know, crime enthusiasts and influencers down there putting out a lot of content. Some of it's very compelling. Is that a problem for law enforcement?
It can be and it can't be. You know, sometimes, you know, the internet sleuths are out there. I look at Reddit and I see the trails and the threads and everything like that. You read it and it keeps people entertained to an extent. does it affect us? It affects the case when they interfere. I'm talking interference, meaning they get engaged in the case, that there somehow leaks come out, or they are actually at the scene doing things. That's where I would have a problem with. You can talk all you want on the side, on the internet, that's fine. Would it be a possibility that someone leaks something out? Yeah, and that's one thing we're concerned about. But that's why I think with this case, there hasn't been any leaks, which is pretty impressive.
But when they start posting pictures of suspects, naming names, and this is, as a result of their sleuthing or guesswork, that can put people in danger. We saw that in Brown University. We saw it in the Boston Marathon bombing, where they said, this is,
I've seen a lot of like AI demasking of the doorbell camera things, and with different people looking very differently.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. That's why with that new video out there, they blot out his face, because imagine that person's face is out there. All of a sudden, you get 1,000 tips saying that's the guy who did this. That's a video of a person who is out there. Is he doing something out of the ordinary? Yes. Is he the perpetrator in this case? Far from it. But what happens is the court of public opinion will see it, identify him, and saying that's the guy no matter what. And that's the concern for law enforcement. We don't go by public opinion. We go by facts and circumstances to make arrests.
Did you guys think when this first started that we would be here, nearly 3 weekends later?
Not really.
13 days is a very long time, and I don't think anyone... Yeah. It's almost, you think about that, the amount of time that's taken place. I don't think any kidnapper would be prepared to be that extended amount of time with somebody.
You agree with that?
I mean, I look at the other cases. Sidney Riso, the president of Exxon, that went on for a long time. Ultimately, he had died, and they were still demanding the ransom. Samuel Bronfman, that turned around in just a few days. Same with Marcy Klein and other cases. So, you get to the Getty kidnapping, that went on for months. Elizabeth Smart, 9 months. So you've seen one kidnapping, you've seen one kidnapping.
Andrew, I mean, is there an upside to the the large amount of information on a case in terms of tips received or the ability to crowdsource a particular lead? Or
Anderson,
do more random tips, mean more manpower needed to run things down, and a lot of them don't turn out to be anything?
That's absolutely true. But at the end of the day, like most investigators, I'm an intel guy. I want the information, whatever you have. Whatever you have, I want more than that. The tips that go nowhere, the people who are intentionally trying to distract you and mislead you, that's all part of this work. Everybody understands that. It's incumbent upon the leaders of these entities that are conducting the investigation to resource it in such a way that you can handle that kind of volume. We famously did not do that when we released the photographs in the Boston bombing case. We showed the photographs of the bombers to the world and asked for information, and immediately we got so much information in that it essentially knocked down our entire system. We couldn't receive any tips or photographs or videos for a while, because we kind of we basically inflicted a denial of service attack on ourselves. So you learn those lessons. You learn what you need in terms of manpower to actually go through this stuff, and you also build up those electronic systems to handle the load. That's part of the responsibility.
Andrew McCabe, John Miller, Richard Kolko.
Breaking news, the Pima County Sheriff telling CNN now that authorities have found DNA other than Nancy Guthrie's and those in close contact to her, which we understand includes housekeepers, gardeners, and family members at her property. Now, he says they've received more than 30,000 tips in the case so far, the majority since that doorbell cam came out. Guthrie's neighbors are on edge. No suspects named. 13 days after she was last seen. It will be 2 weeks tomorrow night. Out front now is Laura Gargano, who has lived near Nancy Guthrie in Tucson for more than a decade. And Laura, I'm glad to see you again, although disappointed because, we all keep hoping that this nightmare is going to end and that she will be returned. She will be alive, back with her family. But I know, Laura, you have just been, desperately, like everyone in the neighborhood, trying to do anything possible to help. And you've pointed out something very interesting, and that is Nancy's door. In the community, I guess others have similar doors, including yourself. You say you have the same door. What does that tell you, Laura?
What this tells me is, and I noticed it during, I noticed the way the person on the video was staring at the front door. That told me he wasn't that familiar with these doors, perhaps, because anybody who has these doors, they're really screen doors, but they're uber screen doors. They're extra secure, and we don't do well with screens here because of all the bugs and the extreme weather. So these are also protective over our doors. And I have one at the back of my house, and they're super secure, and they're usually, they have metal frames, and you're not going to break into those doors very easily. So my initial reaction was he's not that familiar with that house and that door, because you're not going to get in those doors very easily. You're going to, in my opinion, try to find another way in. And perhaps he was just looking at how they were going to get out.
Well, and okay, that's a really important point. First of all, if I know obviously this is just your informed knowledge as a neighbor, but
Right.
if it's not someone who knew her well or who knew that door, that obviously is a huge piece of information if that ends up being the case. But also what you're saying about the door being so, because I guess the assumption maybe many have had is that when he took the doorbell cam off and he stuck those weeds up by it, that somehow he did get in the door. You're saying that it's possible it could have been another way. You're familiar with the layout of the home. So what does that open to you in terms of a possibility of how this individual may have gotten in?
Well, I don't know how he would have gotten in without a key, because these screen doors really are very secure. And so my next thought was that he must have gotten in another way. And there, of course, people have seen videos and photos, and there are numerous other ways around the house, such as screen sliders, sliding glass doors, and also, I don't know, regular doors. She might have had a regular door off the garage, I'm not sure. But a lot of people have sliding glass doors. Of course, there's always windows, and that's just an observation. But that front door, to me, isn't one that you're going to break into easily.
And you were familiar, you say, with the fact that where she would have been, as we understand, which is sleeping, would have been in her bedroom on the left side of the house.
Yes, I believe that that's the case. And I think that may have been where they went, around the side of the house. Looking at the videos, you can see that on the left side, there are bushes, and you can't see that very well from the street. And on the right side, you can see the garage, and you can very clearly see the driveway in the side of the house. So that would be a natural potential direction that he would have gone. But I don't know that. I'm just looking at the house from the front and having been there.
Well, I mean, it's obviously having been there and just the information that you have, I think. Front this evening, a major development in the Nancy Guthrie investigation. The Pima County Sheriff confirming that investigators have DNA evidence. Now, the sheriff is not saying exactly where that DNA is found, but they are calling it significant. And the sheriff is also telling CNN that investigators have the DNA from Guthrie, her family, her landscapers, and her housekeepers, okay? And they don't know who the DNA belongs to, right? So obviously you would presume they've run all those checks and it wasn't this DNA. And while there is still no indication of where Guthrie could be, the sheriff did tell CNN, quote, "We got some good leads. We remain hopeful."
So we're just chasing down leads. I've got 400 cops out there chasing down 30-some thousand leads.
And those 30-some thousand leads he refers to have been pouring in ever since authorities released the doorbell cam video, which showed the masked suspect outside Guthrie's home the night she vanished. Now, as for Guthrie herself, the sheriff does say he believes she will be found. And it all comes as we've got this new video tonight, okay? That's Nancy Guthrie's pool, and those are maintenance workers at her pool today. They were there for 20 minutes cleaning the pool. Now, Guthrie's home, of course, is a crime scene surrounded by law enforcement hunting for DNA, and the pool company shows up. The sheriff's department says a member of the family contacted the company and asked them to service the pool. So obviously a bit jarring, but that's what we saw today on the activity. Ed Lavendera is out front live in Tucson, Arizona. And Ed, a very revealing interview that you had with the sheriff on this investigation, on the leads and on this crucial revelation about DNA, even as he's telling you they've checked it against the landscapers and everybody else who would regularly be at the home.
Right, so the question is this actually the suspect's DNA, or is it someone else that they just don't have the match for and can't discount? All of that are questions that just remain in the air at this point. But this comes, it's clear that they are getting a staggering amount of tips and clues, help from the public, but still almost 2 weeks into the search for Nancy Guthrie, still no sign of where she might be. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nano says DNA has been recovered from gloves and that DNA has also been found on other evidence in Nancy Guthrie's house. The DNA tests that have been done, has anything come back and pointed toward anyone in particular?
Well, no, we have DNA. So trust me, if we knew who it was, we'd be on it. But we do have some DNA, and we'll continue to work with the lab on that DNA analysis.
Is that DNA that you have, you believe, might be the suspects? It just doesn't match anyone in a lab, or?
What we have is we have some DNA, and we don't know whose it is. So we'll keep looking.
Well, that's significant.
Well, it is, yeah.
And that was from the house?
I'm not telling you where it was. We have DNA.
This comes as multiple news reports accuse Nanos and his department of withholding key DNA evidence from the FBI. One source confirmed the reports to CNN. Another source tells CNN the stories are overblown. Sheriff Nano says it's crazy to think he wouldn't work with the FBI.
The FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Department are joined at the hips. We want to find Nancy. This story of the FBI being blocked, the sheriff blocked them, I would never. Why would I do that?
The release of the doorbell camera video showing the suspect approaching Nancy Guthrie's front door has generated an avalanche of leads for investigators. The sheriff says the video was released within 2 hours of it being turned over to investigators.
When we put that video out, that photo of that guy in the front doorway, that generated in a matter of hours almost 5,000 calls. Those leads, every single lead is looked at.
You said last week that there are multiple cameras in the house. Are there additional videos that have been recovered from the other cameras that you can say exist?
What I know is those cameras were given to the same company, I believe it's Google Nest, to say, look, what can you do for us? They developed that one. It was iffy for them. They don't know, but they're working on it. I pray and hope.
Do you think Nancy Guthrie will be found?
Yes, I believe she'll be found. And I believe that we are working as hard as we can to do that as fast as we can. Sometimes it just doesn't work that way, but we are working hard.
Aaron, this is our first chance to ask the sheriff questions about the state of the investigation since late last week. A couple other things, we've been talking about, there had been reports that investigators were looking for possibly a white van in the area. We asked the sheriff about that. He really wouldn't give us a clear answer as to if that is indeed the case. They said they're looking at everything. And we also asked the sheriff about whether or not they've been able to pinpoint exactly how this suspect might have driven into the neighborhood where Nancy Guthrie lives. And he says so far no clear indication that they have that route just yet.
Wow, which is incredible in some senses when you think about we're at 2 weeks tomorrow night here from this. Ed, thank you very much. And everyone's here with me now. So, Chip, you heard the sheriff talking to Ed there. And he said a lot of important things. By the way, that stuff about the van is really important. They still don't know how the person got into the neighborhood with all this door cam video they have. That in itself is stunning. But he says they've got DNA. Now, we don't know if the DNA they have is merely somebody who is innocent and would have been around the house that they haven't thought of or don't know about. But we do presume that this DNA doesn't match known landscapers, housekeepers, family members, or others that they may have been looking at. How significant is this DNA?
Well, it could be everything and it could be nothing, right? Because, it's great as an eliminator too, so they already have the DNA of the family. They already have, people around them. The DNA that's collected from that glove, I'd want to know where that glove was, where that DNA was collected from. Was it in the house? Was it from the roadside? All those are going to be extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely. Wally, because, we don't know. Obviously, there are certain people who would be around the house all the time, whether it's family or landscapers, that their DNA would be there regardless.
Correct. And one of the things, once they determine the DNA, where that DNA is from, they have another outlet, and we have genetic DNA. There's a company in Texas that NYPD uses, and they send it there. It can actually tell your race, creed, color, your religion.
Without any match, right? So you don't know who it is, but it'll give you all that.
They'll give you more data, pertinent data. That's very important. But it takes a longer time to get the results.
How long does it take, General?
Sometimes it can take 2 months, 3 months.
Oh, so it could take okay. So that's an extraordinary long time.
It's used a lot in cold cases.
Right, which we pray this will not become, but
Yes.
we are 2 weeks in here, of course. John Miller, the sheriff, did say DNA has been found on several gloves. Now, the DNA that they're saying was found, they're not saying where or on what, so we don't know if it is on the gloves. But they are saying they've got DNA on gloves. And in fact, I guess as you drive around, there are gloves on the side of the road everywhere, including in Tucson, Arizona. And they found gloves as far as 10 miles away from home, and they don't know if any of them are involved or not. Is this telling, or does this make you say, wow, if we're looking at every glove we're finding on the road 10 miles away, we're a long way away from an answer here?
It shows that they have broadened the collection, which is a good thing because, you could have 9 gloves that mean nothing. If you find a glove that actually connects to this, it's going to be tremendously significant. And, if the DNA is on the glove, if DNA was found within the home, if those two match, that means something.
Huge. Yeah.
But even DNA found in the home, if you end up developing a suspect down the road and you say, Chip, have you ever been in that house? And they say, I have never been anywhere near that house, and you've collected DNA from inside. Now you have a false exculpatory statement. Now you have a suspect who just went from being a suspect to being a major prime suspect. So all of this collection, whether it solves the case today or next week, eventually is going to be significant.
Right, it adds up. I mean, Mary Ellen, what do you think here about the DNA? And the fact that we're hearing this again from the sheriff. I mean, we know there's many teams out there, right? You've got FBI, you've got others, right? But this is the sheriff saying this.
Sure. I think the DNA has to be exploited and investigated, but it also has to be probative. So, and I heard several of your guests say that, they have to go back and they have to see who has been in that house. So they have to create what's called an elimination database to make sure that they can eliminate people that could have been a contributor to that DNA. And we don't know how long the DNA has been there. So it is a really good thing. But unlike TV, it doesn't automatically, within seconds, identify the name of the person that contributed it.
Wally, the other odd thing about this, then, that this is the incongruous images of the pool cleaning team coming, right? Now, the family asked them to do that. I presume the family didn't do that without the FBI or somebody saying it's okay, right? I mean, I don't know, but I would presume that. But there's this odd thing of people coming in and out, and originally this not being a crime scene, then it becoming a crime scene. Even as they're hunting for DNA, you got people walking in and leaving DNA. What does all this mean?
Well, of course, anyone that walks into that home definitely has to have their name, identification checked, I believe, by anyone. We do that at every crime scene.
Yeah.
And on this particular situation, maybe they're on a regular schedule where they come in, maybe the family forgot, as you said. But also, keep in mind, the pool is full. It's full of water. The FBI or whoever is working that investigation there can say, you know what, I want to look at the pool filters. And they're the ones that can get the pool filters out of there without any type of compromise of the pool filters tipping over, where they might have to empty the pool. But it could be used as part of helping
It could have been,
the
right, which is an
investigation.
interesting angle, which perhaps many didn't think of. All right, so, John Miller, we know that the FBI has identified the backpack that the suspected kidnapper was wearing. Okay, in that image, right, where you saw that reflective black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack is what it's exactly called. Okay, so we see it there in the image, right? TMZ was first to report that, then they referred it. So we actually went and got one because it's so far one of the most important pieces of information, right, that they've got. Okay, this is you see pictures of it. This is the exact same model. This is the Ozark Trail. Okay, now what's interesting about this is that we bought it at Walmart. A Walmart in New Jersey. Okay,
Right.
So this is carried at Walmarts across the country. I would presume in Arizona as well. But I mean, my point is, this is a standard Walmart issue.
A Walmart private brand.
Okay, so you can get it anywhere. It sells for $10.88. $10.88. Now we put stuff in it so that it looked the way it looked on his back. Now, I'm just thinking back when Luigi Mangione was captured, right?
They identified that backpack
And
as well.
that backpack in Central Park, and they said that was when people said, oh, maybe this person isn't this ruthless, so sophisticated genius. They just dropped their backpack in Central Park. The backpack was important. I mean, how big of a puzzle piece could this be? I mean, $10.88 for this.
I mean, it could be in that, did the person buy it with cash or a credit card? If they bought it with cash and that can be isolated or identified, then you have video of them at the cash register. If you've been to Walmart, you know the cameras are pointing there.
Right.
It also means you could back up through that video system because they have cameras all over the store to track shoplifters and other things and develop a video profile. But then there's the possibility that somebody ordered it online from Walmart. And then you have electronic records of who ordered it online, who ordered it online in concentric circles from Tucson. So it's not a smoking gun, but it is something that is a structured piece of data that you can search backwards from.
Yeah, and okay, so Chip, and as I was saying, you know, we put something in it so that people could see, because on his back it's clearly packed, pretty tightly packed, okay? And just so everyone understands, you know, some backpacks have a little bit of stretch. This one doesn't, okay? It doesn't. When you fill it, you fill it. It's not going to get extra stuff to keep bulging out. When you look at the size of it, okay, what do you, and you see it full in his back, what's your theory as to what was in it if you think about the fact that this person was going in either, we don't know at this point, burglary gone wrong, intent to abduct, we don't know.
Yeah. Well, presumably, we're thinking is that if he's going in with an empty backpack, then I'm saying burglary. I'm saying he's going in for goods, cash grab, jewelry, whatever. But it's full. It's pretty tight, like you mentioned.
Yep.
So what's in it? Well, likely we're going to have zip ties. We're going to have duct tape. We're going to have all the typical elements that you would associate and we have known with kidnappers and what they use to restrain people. It could also be a large cover for her to come out with without looking too obvious.
Yep.
It could also be used after he's used that for the kidnapping. He could throw his mask in there, his gloves in there.
Right, right. Anything like that, right. It just, you see just how full it is there in that one picture. Another thing, you know, we first saw the doorbell cameras, Mary Ellen, that I don't know, stood out to me, and I know stood out to you, is on the back. And I'm sitting here with lights, so now you can actually see it with the way our lights are shining, because when I'm looking at it here, I don't see the reflection, but look at everyone here can look on the camera. Right. You see it there, okay? These are the reflective bands. And I know, Mary Ellen, that you think these are very telling. How come?
Well, I think they're telling because if you're going to enter somebody's home, and you're dressed up like that, so your face is protected, your arms are protected, your hands and so forth, it's not likely you're going to go into the house and flip on all the lights. So you're going to have to operate and move around in the cover of darkness. So anything that you can wear or carry in your hand to help illuminate the inside of the home is going to be helpful. And it's consistent with what we're seeing as he walks on the porch and has, again, has gone to a lot of effort not to be seen. It would be a huge conflict to think he went inside and just lit up all the lights so that she could see him coming in towards the room where she was. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Wally, I also just am highlighting here the price point. Luigi Mangione had an expensive backpack, and he was a rich kid. This backpack is $10.88. Now, I don't know exactly what it might be in Tucson, whether it's the same at every single Walmart. New Jersey, it was $10.88. This is as inexpensive as a backpack can get.
It tells you that person financially is not in the highest area, or that person was in a hurry, needed to go into some place and get something.
Or that person is buying a cheap pair of gloves, a cheap mask, and a cheap backpack because his first intention is to use it in furtherance of this crime, and his second intention is to get rid of it right away.
Right.
So there's no sense buying a $100 backpack.
No, and we just don't know. And John, I guess, do we have any sense of, when you talk about Walmart having cameras on things, it was interesting talking to the Ring camera founder last night with all the data coming in. You know, we live in this world of AI where people say, well, why can't you just search through it and give me the 5 pictures that look like this and boom, 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 right? Like as it would in a TV show, but as we hear, you can, you know, with AI now. How easy is it for Walmart? I mean, do they have the state-of-the-art modern cameras in all their stores? Do we even know? I mean, to look for a camera on the backpacks in the Tucson area stores and see what happened over X period of time? Is that simple?
The one things that major department stores have and retain is multiple cameras. I mean, probably second to casinos.
Yeah.
The largest number of cameras to track shrink, shoplifting, employee theft. The other thing they have is retention, because if someone calls up or files a lawsuit saying, I slipped, fell, and hit my head in that Walmart, 3 months ago.
They need to have the data.
So I think the fact that it was a Walmart, a major department store that is very technically savvy, I know their security people, is probably a good thing if they get the kind of data that leads them to what store, what purchase.
Right, which is, but as you point out, very significant. Second only to casinos, but also that Walmart would have, for the reasons that they would have it and retain it. So, Bob, as we're trying to understand, the sheriff has just said moments ago, the breaking news to Ed Lavendera, that they have many leads, they have DNA. We have the feeling that this is moving, and we all hope incredibly rapidly that perhaps we may be there, that Nancy Guthrie could be coming home. How soon, when you, as a member of these SWAT teams, when would we know if something is really going on with those SWAT teams? How soon would we know?
Well, if they had good information, especially on a location for Nancy, that would take place immediately. You'd see some movement with urgency. If it were just typical follow-up that required a SWAT response, sometimes, depending on what the information was, where it was, things like that could, if there's no exigency involved and no one's safety is at risk, that's going to take a little longer. You're going to have to organize the team. You're going to have to get the team together. You're looking at probably an hour at a bare minimum from the text going out, the page going out for the team to mobilize and to get out there. But again, if something related to safety, and especially Nancy, were involved, you probably would know around town, because you're going to see a lot of cops probably driving really fast to get to some places.
Just the urgency of it. And is your feeling, Bob, and obviously, we don't know what we don't know at this time, but that given the fact that this has been almost 2 weeks and that we're talking about an 84-year-old woman, and we know she is both physically frail and and with physical health issues, that your feeling is that this would be an all hands on deck immediate situation.
Absolutely. If there was any bit of information that said that she was alive, she was safe, or at least there was signs of life and we knew where she was, everyone would be going there. There's the emergency aid doctrines in play. So even without a warrant at that point, we could go and do what we could to bring her home as safely as possible.
Wow, even without a warrant, which is significant. I mean, because you've been in these situations, Bob, what a SWAT team does when they get to a location, right? When they swarm in and get there. And obviously, we all hope that this will happen very soon, right? For Nancy Guthrie and her family's sake. What happens then when they get there?
Sure. So the way typical missioners who work, assignments are going to be made. We're going to know the locations that we're going to. We're going to have scouted it, have seen it through video, through Google Earth, through all sorts of various means. Everyone's going to know literally within feet of where they're going to respond to. We're going to do our best to get in there safely, to provide safety for the community, to provide safety for the officers, and to provide safety for any suspects that are involved. And that's what we train for. And it's going to be a choreographed ballet. There's going to be a lot of vehicles. Everybody knows exactly where they're going. We have probably seen the location within minutes of us getting there, so we know where vehicles are parked and things like that. And then based on what your assignment is, folks are going to go to the back of the house, to the front door, maybe stay back behind cover and call people out to us, all depending on what the mission profile is. Different missions require different responses, but in essence, that's essentially what it is. You're going to see a lot of well-trained men and women knowing what their assignments are, and they're going to do it real well.
All right, and we hope they're going to be doing it soon. Obviously, they did earlier this week, right? And that ended up not being the individual that kidnapped Nancy Guthrie. But we are hoping that this could happen again soon, and they will have the right person. Bob, thank you very much. And more breaking news: TMZ tonight receiving a new email. It is the third demanding more money in exchange for the identity of Nancy Guthrie's kidnapper. This person saying that they know the identity of the kidnapper. The emailer increasing his price to $100,000 in Bitcoin, which was up from $66,000, and $100,000, of course, matches the amount now offered by the FBI. I'm going to talk to Harvey Levin of TMZ in just a moment, but TMZ also is reporting that it has identified the brand and model of the windbreaker worn by the suspect seen on Guthrie's doorbell camera. And that, of course, is on the heels of TMZ correctly identifying the backpack the suspect was wearing that we just showed you, because we went then and bought one at Walmart after Harvey's reporting, $10.88. Police confirming this detail more than 24 hours after TMZ first reported it. Joining us now, Harvey Levin, founder of TMZ. And obviously, Harvey, you've been breaking developments on this all the way along, including the fact that you received the original ransom note. Now, you've got a third letter from this alleged tipster. They've now said they want nearly double the money, or another 30-some-odd% more, after you were told yesterday there would be no more contact. What do you make of this latest email? I mean, do you think this is the same person, and do you have any better feel for the veracity of it?
Yeah. Yes, I think it's the same person. And forgetting about what I feel about the veracity, I'm going to tell you something. The FBI, and I'm going to go back to the ransom letter first, they are intensely interested in this first ransom letter that we got. I can tell you that. I'm not going to be more specific. They are intensely interested in that ransom letter. They are also interested in these 3 emails we've received from this man who says he knows exactly who and where the kidnapper is. Can I run this down? There's quite a bit here, but I think it's important. So this man sent us an email about noon today, Pacific time. And basically he says, I don't try to tell he said, he wants TMZ essentially to tell the FBI that he doesn't trust the FBI and he knows the FBI doesn't trust him. So he says that's why he's going to go through TMZ. He says he wants the $100,000 reward, but he wants it his way. What he wants is a fraction of a Bitcoin worth $50,000 immediately put in his name or put in his account. And we have that. It's the same Bitcoin address as the other 2 emails we got. And he said he will then immediately provide, this is a quote, Aaron, the name of the main individual along with his information for you to track. I could just see by a gesture you made, you got that word main. I found that really interesting because he's suggesting more than one person, but this is the main individual. He also says he will not touch the $50,000 until an arrest is made. And once that happens, they can then deposit the other 50 and he'll take the money. He goes on to say that he's gambling his safety and his possible freedom. The way I read that is that they might think he's somehow implicated, that he's, I don't know, close to the flame or something like that. But he talks about, compromising his possible freedom. Some ominous references to Nancy, to be honest with you. But then I got to read this, and I haven't really publicized this yet, but I'm going to tell you what this says. Okay. It says that, but he said, the manhunt of the main individual that can give you all the answers, be prepared to go international. That to me, again, I can't tell you that this is a guy who actually knows, but he has to be talking about Mexico.
He has to be talking about Mexico. I mean, Tucson is what, 30 miles away, very close. And look, I don't traffic in theories that we all see on social media, although we all know many of them have gotten a lot of traction, right? But that is something that many people obviously have realized, just to state the obvious, the proximity to Tucson of the Mexican border. Now, we don't know whether the letter's real. I know that, Harvey. None of us know. But that is obviously very important, as is, as you highlighted, main individual. Now, I know we all had said, right, that she would have been, it's hard for her to move. There had initially been the idea that there was more than one person. I think then when the door cam video came out, right, people started honing in on one person. But just because there's one person on the video doesn't mean there's only one person. I mean, stating the obvious, right?
And again, you're right. You and I can't tell if with the veracity of this. What I can say is I know authorities are really interested in this. They're really interested in the ransom letter, but they are definitely interested in these 3 letters. What's perplexing to me is, I mean, $67,000 is a lot of money, but do you roll the dice and pay it? Or do you roll the dice for $50,000 to see if you get the information? We've checked the account, so far nothing. I'm perplexed by that.
So far, nothing. Okay, and obviously the FBI has the account, they have the information. So Harvey, I guess I'm just trying to understand, if they're running down every lead they have, most of them are going to be completely bunk, even though they may be well-intentioned, and maybe some in those tips are going to lead them to the actual people or person involved. Has the FBI told you what to do here? I mean, are they just taking these letters from you and being interested? Are they telling you to respond? Are you responding? I mean, is there a two-way street with this individual right now?
No, at least not with us, and I don't think with them either. These email addresses do not yield fruit.
Okay. All right, now, because you identified the backpack 24 hours before law enforcement, and we went and got one just to look at it, what it could fit and everything, Harvey, we went to the Walmart and got it, the $10.88 Ozark backpack. You were the first to find that. You also now believe you've identified the jacket worn by the suspect. So what have you found there? We haven't confirmed those details yet.
Yeah, so here's what we're looking at. Initially, we saw this Aero Hex windbreaker, which we thought it might be, and there were similarities to it. We've been digging all day. We think this is called the Athletic Works Fusion Knit Jacket. And if you compare the qualities of this jacket, it's a Walmart jacket, which is interesting. It is a Walmart jacket. It's made of fleece, and we're trying to compare the 2 things. It's got the same black horizontal stripe as what the kidnapper is wearing, the same type of zipper. The material matches and the pockets match. And it is looking to us like this Athletic Works Fusion Knit Jacket from Walmart is what it looks like this kidnapper is wearing.
Okay, now the Athletics Fusion wear. So Harvey, I don't know if you know the answer to this. First of all, many crucial things there, but the obvious one is Walmart, right? That would imply that the person went and bought all. Now we don't know how long ago they did, or maybe they went and bought them all together. It's possible. It's possible, and then Walmart really would be able to find this because now you've got a jacket and a backpack together if they did buy them. One of the things that stood about the backpack was that it was $10.88, okay, at Walmart, which is about as inexpensive as a backpack can get. Do you have a sense of what the athletic wear fusion jacket costs?
Can I be indelicate for a minute? Alexa, do we know what that jacket costs? My producer who worked on this is not in the room right now. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, when they get it, just they can yell it over, and you'll just jump in on whatever we're talking about and share it.
If you guys see this, let me know.
Okay.
They're calling me right now.
Okay, great. So the newly surfaced doorbell camera that I want to show you now, Harvey, is from about a house 6.5 miles away. It's one of the many videos the FBI is looking into. Now, we're going to blur the man's face on this video, but you can clearly see his movements. Now, can you walk us through what we're looking at in this particular video? We're showing it. This is on a Ring camera. So this, again, I want to just emphasize, man is being blurred here. But you can clearly see his movements. And this is a house about 6.5 miles away from the Guthries. Why could this be significant, Harvey?
Well, they're looking for anything, and we're not connecting the dots, but they are looking for suspicious activity. This was recorded 8 days before Nancy's kidnapping, and this man clearly is skulking around, and he caught the neighbor's attention. The dog started to bark. So this is something that we're told authorities are looking at. And, we showed you one yesterday. Aaron, look, there are one or two things that are going on here. Either this is a robbery gone bad, or it was a targeted kidnapping. And it's just, I'm just going to give you an opinion now. It's just weird to me that this is just a robbery. because when you look at the guy at Nancy's door, he's got this holster and this gun around his crotch, and that's not that's not the way that you hold a gun. So he seems very awkward with this gun. I don't know. He just doesn't feel like this trained robber, and it just, you know, you can look at all these other people, but that doesn't mean that person is committing a robbery here and a robbery there. It presumes that this is somebody who's robbing people in the neighborhood. And I don't know that the goods are there to assume that. I just don't.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Harvey, thank you very much.
Two other things. What did you say? $27 for that jacket.
$27 for the jacket. Okay. $10.88 for the backpack. $27 for the jacket. Okay.
And then the final thing I just want to say is we have not confirmed with law enforcement that that is the jacket or that's their operating theory. It's just what we've been doing, and it looks very much like that to us. So I just want to make that clear.
No, I think, and it's important to make that clear. Obviously, you're right about the backpack 24 hours ahead, but I know this is, with all your reporting, what it seems like we don't yet know that that's real. You know, and that they haven't confirmed it. All right, Harvey, thank you very much.
Sheriff working to quash rumors that his department and the FBI aren't working in tandem to find Nancy Guthrie. Sheriff Chris Nano sitting down with CNN's Ed Lavendera just moments ago as the sprawling search across Tucson, Arizona for Nancy Guthrie nears 2 weeks today. We'll be hearing more from him momentarily. Meantime, of course, there is still no indication of where the 84-year-old mother of Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie could be. The sheriff, though, does tell CNN affiliate KOLD investigators have, in his words, good leads. The FBI last night releasing a description of the suspect seen in this chilling doorbell camera footage, describing him as 5'9" to 5'10", a male with average build, and wearing an Ozark Trail hiker backpack. Now, that is Walmart's private label outdoor brand. The FBI has also doubled the reward from $50,000 to $100,000 as investigators continue to field thousands of tips. The Tucson community still keeping the faith for Nancy's safe return. Yellow ribbons and flowers lining the trees and the roads near her home, a symbol that has been used for years. To my colleague, Lavendera, he's been on the ground there in Tucson throughout the investigation. Ed, you just, of course, spoke with the sheriff. What more did he tell you?
Well, this interview comes after the sheriff is kind of embroiled in some controversial reports about whether or not he blocked the FBI from accessing key evidence. There have been multiple reports saying that that the sheriff early on in this investigation kept the FBI from seeing DNA evidence. He strongly denies that that's what's happened. The sheriff insists that the work that has happened here over the last 2 weeks of this investigation has been done side by side with FBI authorities from the very beginning. So pushing back very strongly in that. But we also had a chance to talk about some of the other evidence that they have been collecting, and if we are any closer to finding the suspect or where Nancy Guthrie might be. One of the interesting highlights of this interview, though, is we asked him about the DNA evidence that has been found so far, and this is part of that conversation with him.
We have DNA. So trust me, if we knew who it was, we'd be on it. But we do have some DNA, and we'll continue to work with the lab on that DNA analysis.
Is that DNA that you have, you believe, might be the suspects? It just doesn't match anyone in a lab, or?
What we have is we have some DNA, and we don't know whose it is. So we'll keep looking.
So this seems like a rather significant development in this. We haven't had a chance to speak with the sheriff on camera like this for a week now, and the idea and the note here that there is some sort of unknown DNA evidence at this point seems to be a significant development in this investigation. Obviously, investigators now trying to work as best they can to figure out where this DNA is coming from and whose it might be. It could be that it's like someone completely unconnected, and it also could be the suspect. We do not know at this point, but obviously the sheriff also says that the video that we saw released by the FBI this week has generated an immense number of leads. They have been finding gloves, for example. A lot of gloves have been turned over to investigators. A lot of those probably actually have nothing to do with all of with this investigation, but because the suspect in that video was wearing gloves, they have to check out all of them. So an extensive interview with the sheriff here this afternoon. Ultimately, we asked him, will Nancy Guthrie be found? And he insists that she will be found, and helping out the family get to that moment is key for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Ed, really appreciate it, and I know there'll be more to come from that interview. Thank you for those early details. I want to break some of this down now with former FBI agent Brandon Fox, who's now an associate professor at the University of South Florida. It's great to have you with us this afternoon. So the sheriff there telling Ed that investigators have this DNA. They don't know whose it is, he says. What does this tell you about where the investigation could stand in this moment?
Yeah, this is another big break. I mean, they've obviously been working on this, but we're just coming to find out. However, that means that they've been processing it. There could be some genetic genealogy going on right now. This has been obviously used in recent cases in the Idaho college murders. There was a lot of other high-profile cases where it's been successfully used. So that could be something looking at. Now, it may not be the suspects, but it could lead us in a direction. You know, who was there? What maybe they know outside of the family, of course. So it's just another lead, and that could be a huge break.
I just want, for people who may not remember, you mentioned what happened in Idaho. I believe you're referencing the murders in Moscow, Idaho, and it was going through the trash, essentially, if I'm recalling correctly, of the suspect's parents, that then they were able to tie some of it. So is that what you're saying? It could end up being a situation like that?
That's exactly right. So we have DNA. They may not be able to match it with anyone in a known database, meaning this person probably never committed a violent crime requiring a swabbing and entering it into our DNA database systems. But that doesn't mean that it's hopeless. It means that they are able to essentially look at who may be, family members or related to this person, and through, they consent to have their data be part of, an open database that they can hopefully match and see, well, this could be a potential half brother, a cousin of the person who was at that scene.
Yeah.
And then that comes more police work.
We also have this description that the FBI released on Thursday of the suspect in that doorbell camera video. And they also clarified that this backpack is an Ozark Trail Hiker backpack. It's a brand that is sold only at Walmart. It's their private label brand. So that helps to narrow things down potentially a little bit. Walk us through that process.
Right. So there are at least 4,000 leads that have come just in the past, one day since the images were released. Those leads may have several people, named, or, some, hints of there's this person and they look like this. That starts, triangulating when we look at receipts for purchases for this exact backpack. They start in the Tucson region. They expand nationally. They can look at every single purchase that was made, the credit card or the cash, the video associated with it. That will lead to somebody. That will lead to a purchase. They can then start associating that with tips that they've gotten, or just good old-fashioned police work, and trying to track down every single purchaser and see, do they have an alibi? Where were they? What do they know Mrs. Guthrie?
Yeah, in terms of that good old-fashioned police work, this is not the first time that we have heard in a high-profile case, especially about tensions between local and federal law enforcement. The sheriff just addressing some of that with Ed a little bit earlier in that interview. How important is it that there be a healthy working relationship, especially in cases like this, between local and federal law enforcement and investigators?
Yeah, critical. And, I want to remind, because I've heard a few people state that this is the FBI's case. It's not. This remains the Pima County Sheriff's Office case. They have invited the FBI to assist on the case because they bring enormous resources, experience. They have manpower, things that the Pima County Sheriff's Office doesn't have. But it remains the Pima County Sheriff's Office case. So when they're applying for search warrants, when they're conducting interrogations, it will be the Sheriff's Office that does that. That's obviously why this collaboration is so important.
Yeah, part of that dispute we're learning about this, which also involves some of the resources that you're mentioning of the federal government. The sheriff is denying this dispute, but there's been a little back and forth reported about evidence being sent to a private contracted lab, which the sheriff's department uses, or back to Quantico to an FBI lab. What would be the difference? What would be the benefit, perhaps, of sending something to Quantico in this case, even if it meant perhaps splitting up the evidence in the investigation?
Right. And not to, I don't know anything about this lab in Florida, this private lab, but the FBI labs in Quantico are the state of the art, the best, I think, in the planet. So obviously the FBI would strongly urge that the, testing is done there. It's what they know, what they use, and they have all, immediate access to it. Private labs are obviously open and many, many agencies use them. It doesn't diminish the quality of the results, but it's just not something that the FBI normally does because they have this incredible lab at their disposal. So I think that's probably where some dispute came in.
Brianna Fox, really appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you do have information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, just a reminder of the important numbers for you there on the screen. You can call the Pima County Sheriff's Department 3. The mother of NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie. Nancy Guthrie went missing from her home in Tucson, Arizona. The Pima County Sheriff now telling CNN Google is working to see whether it can develop the video from the rest of the security cameras around Nancy Guthrie's home in an effort to recover additional footage from the overnight hours when she disappeared.
Those cameras were given to the same company, I believe is Google Nest, to say, look, what can you do for us? They developed that one. It was iffy for them. They at that time they said, we don't know what we can do. Same thing with the rest of it. They don't know, but they're working on it.
Joining me now, the former Fort Worth Police Chief, Jeff Halstead, who's worked a number of major cases. Really appreciate you joining us this hour. So, as we know, it was a tough process to recover that video. The sheriff says the images that the FBI shared the other day generated, though, more than 5,000 tips. The idea that they could get additional video, what do you think that could change here?
It could drastically change. And, kudos to the investigators and the leadership, and especially our private technology partners for stepping up, because just look at how critical that doorbell camera, the images, and the enhancements have proven to be in just 2 days. Now, if the same success comes from other exterior and or interior cameras, it's a massive break in this case. So it's going to be very, very valuable, not just to the investigators, but to make sure that the quality of the tips are directly related to the technology they're getting from inside or around the perimeter of the residence.
Yeah, we talk about the residents. We were all a little struck here when we learned this from our CNN colleagues on the ground. They saw pool workers at Nancy Guthrie's home today with equipment that appeared to be what one would use for regular maintenance of a pool. Law enforcement was still on the scene there. As I noted, you have managed major crime scenes. Should a pool maintenance or a cleaning service be working at the site of an active crime scene investigation? Why or why not?
Boy, every crime scene is different. So let me explain. They do a controlled access in an area that we consider out of play most of the time. We have had some major crime scenes where an electrical issue happened within the home, and actual contractors, electricians, or fire department personnel had to come right into our scene. So they are secured access. They make sure they monitor everything they're doing. And then the officer that is supervising those types of maintenance work, they have to complete a supplement for the investigation to prove who came in, how they came in, what part of the yard they did to gain access. But more than likely, the pool was out of play and they thought supervised access would be okay.
I also want to ask you about the sheriff. So the sheriff denying reports that the department in Pima County and the FBI are clashing at all when it comes to this investigation. Here's what he just told my colleague at LIVE-N18L.
Who's in charge of this investigation right now?
Look, we are. We means we, the Pima County Sheriff's Department, along with our partners, the FBI. There's no, the egos have been put aside a long time ago. Our whole goal in this is not about the sheriff or being elected, or it is focused on finding Nancy.
We were just getting the sort of federal law enforcement perspective from Brianna Fox a short time ago. She said this is a local investigation. What's your view on this partnership, which is critical, and how it should work in investigations like this one?
Well, the sheriff said the right thing. It is a we investigative approach to this. The public, these federal, city, county, state, and federal all working together. That is the history of success in law enforcement, not just high-profile incidents. Task forces, serial offenders, serial rapists, child abductors. We always work effectively together. Him saying we is part of the passion we have at our company of driving collaboration systems so that they always work well together. And I think that's absolutely instrumental in this case.
I would imagine it almost feels probably like it changes by the day. Another element that is added to cases in 2026. My colleague Brian Stelter writing in his Reliable Sources newsletter today about the influx of true crime influencers who've been swarming to Tucson to, quote unquote, cover this case. Even one YouTuber had pizza delivered to the house. He writes there's a recognition, as one person involved in the Guthrie investigation told me, Brian writes, that the breakthrough tip could come from anyone, from anywhere. But there have definitely been occasions, of course, in the last 12 days or so when the aggressive sort of anything goes social media coverage has been unhelpful. How do you balance that? The fact that you could get help from the public, but this is also an actual crime scene. This is a real missing person. This is not an episode of CSI.
No, it's not. What is frustrating in today's environment is you have a lot of social media influencers and a lot of people making videos, and they're just trying to get likes and subscribers and followers. They have to understand to respect not just the crime scene, but the mission of the official law enforcement investigative and the entire investigative capacity of search and protecting things. With that said, you balance this out by building strong partnerships and relationships with many of these influencers. Now, to their credit, they always approach supervisory personnel on scene and make sure that they're not damaging anything relative to the investigation. But a lot of the times, their comments from either viewers or followers is not advantageous to the success of these leads coming in. So the published hotlines and tip lines are still the most strongest avenue to get the quality of leads needed for this investigation.
Well, police in Arizona say they have what they are calling good leads nearly 2 weeks into the investigation of Nancy Guthrie's appearance. Authorities believe the 84-year-old, who is the mother of NBC journalist and Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, was abducted. The FBI has released a description of the person they're calling a suspect. He was seen here on doorbell camera footage from Guthrie's home the night she disappeared. President Trump is crediting the FBI's involvement in the case for the progress, even though it's still unclear where Nancy Guthrie may be. Nick Watt is in Tucson, Arizona, and joins us now live. So, Nick, it's almost 2 weeks since this abduction. What do we know about these new leads?
Well, not much. Listen, in an investigation like this, it is very normal for investigators to keep some information back from the media and the public. They release what might help the investigation. They hold them back. My colleague Ed Lavandera is actually interviewing the local sheriff as we speak, so maybe he will get some more information on what those leads are. I mean, the biggest pieces of evidence, as far as we can tell so far, that video that they somehow managed to drag out of the vaults at Nest that showed that suspect on Nancy Guthrie's doorstep just before Nancy Guthrie was taken. And of course, they've now given us a description, 5'9", 5'10", average build. Also, they've zoned in on that backpack. We now know exactly the brand, the name, where. It's only sold at Walmarts, so they'll be scouring Walmarts to find who has bought that backpack in recent times. So, as I say, Linda, hopefully we're going to hear from the sheriff a little bit more. But, this is day 13. And as far as we know on the outside, so far, no even sign of life. Linda?
And just quickly, there seems to be some dispute between the local sheriff's office there and the FBI over access to forensic evidence. What do you know?
Well, so this was allegedly the local county sheriff wanted to send some pieces of evidence to a lab in Florida that the county sheriff uses. The FBI wanted to send this evidence to Quantico, to their lab. We are told by a number of sources that this has been totally overblown. Listen, in this country, in the US, there is always overlapping jurisdiction. You've got the FBI, the federal agency, you've got the local county. The local county is in charge. We're told it's overblown. Listen, maybe it's frustration that 13 days in, we still don't know who the suspect is. Linda?
Yeah, understandable. Everyone wants answers. Nick Watt, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Continuing to follow breaking news this hour in Tucson, Arizona. The sheriff there says they are actively working a lead in the apparent abduction of Nancy Guthrie. Law enforcement, forensic trucks out in force on a scene about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. The focus appears to be this home that you're looking at right there live. The sheriff says a written statement will be coming
at some point. We've seen more than a dozen law enforcement vehicles there. We're back now with Steve Moore, retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent, CNN law enforcement contributor. Steve, we've gotten a lot of information in the last few days.
Yes, we have.
What does that do?
Anybody who's done a crossword puzzle or a jigsaw puzzle, you know that for a long time things aren't, you just feel like you're in a dry area, you're not going to get anything done. But they're starting to get individual pieces of evidence that should put big pieces together on the puzzle. And I mean,
like what?
Like the DNA they've got the backpack identified, and I understand some of the other clothing identified. And it's very likely that if they were purchased recently, they were purchased together. So you get a bunch of agents, FBI agents out of the Little Rock office, go over to Bentonville and say to the people in Walmart, help us out here. Show us within 50 miles of Tucson, all your Walmarts where these backpacks have been purchased, and then show us times when the backpack was purchased in conjunction with this jacket and these pants. And once you start getting, they say, oh, we got one of those down here in South Tucson, boom. And so those kind of things, we're at the stage that those should be bearing fruit right now. So I'm not surprised that things are happening now. This could be a dry hole. We don't know. We may not be done with these things, but it could be the break we're waiting for.
What does your gut tell you what's happening right now?
My gut tells me that this is a significant move forward, but it's probably not the end of it. But I think it will speed everything up, and I think the dominoes are starting to fall. I don't think this is going to go much longer.
What would be a sign that it's the end of it?
Sign that the end of it is an ambulance going to pick Nancy.
Here in the United States and all around the world, I'm Brian Abel in Atlanta. We are following breaking news out of Tucson, Arizona. Here in the United States and all around the world, I'm Brian Abel in Atlanta. We are following breaking news out of Tucson, Arizona, where there's been police activity not far from the home of Nancy Guthrie. However, the Sheriff's Department posted on social media just a short while ago, quote, because this is a joint investigation at the request of the FBI, no additional information is currently available. The sheriff said earlier they are actively working a lead near Guthrie's home. Several roads in the area remain blocked off, and forensics trucks left the scene just a short while ago. The focus of intense police activity appears to be a residence about 2 miles from Guthrie's home. More than a dozen law enforcement vehicles have been seen at that location. And CNN's Ed Levendare was very close to that police activity near Guthrie's home. Here's what he reported within the last few hours.
What we witnessed in this neighborhood just 2 miles away from where Nancy Guthrie lives is some of the most significant law enforcement activity we've seen in this 2-week-long investigation and search for the 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. This neighborhood is part of Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood. You can access it without reaching any of the major roads. We saw a long stream of law enforcement vehicles, forensic vehicles, SWAT vehicles descending down this street and on Friday night. It is not clear what has happened in terms of who, if anyone has been taken into custody. Authorities here are simply not saying at this point. Local law enforcement officials said that the information was being held at the request of the FBI. Presumably this means that they're working to get more clarity, as this still remains a very fluid situation, but it has been a very intense scene. As I mentioned, this is not like anything we have seen in this 2-week-long investigation since Nancy Guthrie disappeared on February 1st in the early morning hours of that Sunday morning. And this part of the neighborhood is on the northern part, just north of Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood. It sits on a bluff overlooking the city, as we know, and we've reported over the last few weeks. This part of the neighborhood where Nancy Guthrie lives sits in the foothills of Tucson overlooking the city. And so we await and see what kind of news this brings. This search has lasted several hours, presumably will continue lasting. Caretakers or landscapers, and that they do not know whose DNA that is. So that is a huge piece of evidence at this moment as we await to see see where that might lead them. And we also know that the sheriff said that they have received tens of thousands of tips, especially after the video of the suspect on the front porch of Nancy Guthrie's home emerged several days ago. But it is not clear whether or not a tip from that video release is what led investigators to carry out this operation here tonight in Tucson. Ed Lavandera, CNN, Tucson, Arizona.
For more, I want to bring in law enforcement and litigation expert Sonny Slaughter. Sonny, thank you for staying with us. So we have the Pima County Sheriff earlier today telling Ed that they have DNA evidence. Then we see the events in the last handful of hours play out. SWAT activity, then more federal cars arriving, then the FBI deciding not to provide any information other than confirming that the activity is connected to the Guthrie case. What is your takeaway from what's played out these last 24 hours?
So thank you for having me. This is really significant. This is breaking news, but very significant to the case. That means they are looking at something, looking at someone, and looking at the evidence that they've already gathered. It may have been from a tip, it may not have been from a tip, but what we do know is that this is a part of the investigative process. This is what must occur. They are really boots on the ground and doing what they're supposed to do. Now, there was some concern, and I had the same concern about whether they're going to share this information, but apparently the FBI has decided that this is stuff that they need to hold close to the chest. We are likely going to see this push and pull when it comes to communication unless they get on the same page. But more importantly, the focus is to remain on where is Nancy Guthrie, how can they get her, and who has the best possible information to share with them about her location, and that is the individual in the video. They've got some DNA that's not supposed to be there, and that really gives them some leads. So currently they're pulling on the threads of everything. They have the location, and it may turn out to be nothing, but they still have to investigate every lead. It's critical that they're doing this, and we have to give them some room to do what they are doing.
Well, Sonny, you just mentioned that you were potentially concerned about information coming out. What was your concern?
The concern was that the sheriff's office, Pima Sheriff's Office, said that they were going to come out and have a press conference, and then there was pullback, which was directly noted in what was released, that the FBI wanted to hold it. These type of missteps in communication that the public sees can also bring a little chaos and not more clarity, that they're not working well together. And this happens, but we don't want it to happen front and forward in front of everyone. So I do want the public to not be alarmed, because everyone is on edge. So don't be alarmed when you hear language like that, but I do want law enforcement professionals to remain professionals, get a good crisis communication person in there, and not have these missteps. Either you're going to say something or you're not, but don't put it out and then pull it back, because that doesn't look like they are coordinating well together. And they need to keep those things behind the scenes and just do what they need to do and put out information that is critical so the community can help.
Sonny, whatever has happened or is happening in this area about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home, it required a search warrant, right? So what does that signify to you in terms of quality of a lead or evidence for a judge to sign off on that and allow SWAT to go there?
So whatever they had, it required probable cause, and you cannot get probable cause and a search warrant without having some very specific information that will allow them to draft up that warrant and allow them, more importantly, for the judge to sign off on it. Something that they know, something that they received, something that they heard, or some evidence that they've looked at was clear and concise enough for them to say, this is the probable cause that we need in order to go in to detain individuals, to look at what they have in their home, and to get in there, get access, and just do the search. The search was extensive. It is still going on right now. SWAT was involved, and that is really to clear the location and to ensure the safety of everyone that is going to go in that home. They're looking at critical information from electronics, around food, around clothing, even if there are animals in the house, to see whether there's any trace evidence. They're looking for something in that home. And with those cars, they might not find it, but they needed the probable cause warrant that needed to be signed off on the judge in order to go do it. So this didn't just happen really quickly, even though they probably have templates up ready to drop information in the warrant. They had something probably longer than we know, and they are moving on it, and that's exactly what they should be doing.
And also, Sonny, CNN drone footage showed law enforcement with flashlights searching an area outside a home, while flashes were seen inside the home, likely forensic photography. What, if anything, can you take away from that?
I can take away that they're doing their job, and that they have to take all of these photos. They have to ensure, and something that they saw in the house may have said, let's go outside and look. But either way, searches are, I've said this earlier, they're zoom in and zoom out. So you're looking at, law enforcement is looking at what they have on the inside of the home, but they should never miss looking on the outside of the home. As people are walking down the streets, as they're moving about in the community, as they're moving about around their homes, we all might drop something. You know, people tend to discard, if they smoke, they discard cigarettes, they drop papers, they drop even their DNA by touching things and sweat. So they need to cross over from inside outside, gather the information, take the photos, because someone like me later on in the litigation part of this case is going to go through all of that to determine, if I'm working for the defense, did they do this properly? Did they have this correctly? And when they did the analysis on it, and they have my client, do they have the right information based on what I'm seeing in the photos and the evidence that they have collected? All of these things are very critical. So we're looking at the investigation, but Longlands also has to consider what happens in the prosecution.
And Sonny, our teams on the ground can report that all roads have reopened and investigators have left that area, at least for the night. Earlier, a CNN photojournalist at a fast food restaurant about 4 minutes drive away from where the major police activity is happening captured video of the FBI taking pictures of a car in a parking lot there. Now, it's important to note CNN has not been able to confirm whether this is connected to the Guthrie case, but given that the FBI was on scene at this Culver's restaurant as well, does that give you pause to think it may very well be connected? Does the FBI usually join traffic stops or other police activity just because they're in the area?
You know, this case is unusual. They could have seen something that sparked their interest just in the moment and decided, let's go ahead and get the pictures of this particular car. Because we are looking at 14 days now, I think it is incumbent upon them to capture everything that they can, even if it's something that's in the moment. If it's digital, they can always go back to it. And if it turns out to be nothing, fine. But that one incident can turn out to yield a lot of things from there later on if they get another tie-in. So
and we're seeing video right here. It looks like investigators are doing something by a tire. They had a cloth up earlier as pictures were being taken in the back of this vehicle as well.
So see that they're looking for something very specific. And in the tires, remember, the dirt and everything around Nancy Guthrie's home is unique to that area, even though it might be the same type of dirt. There's something unique to that. So they need to be looking at the tread. They're looking on the inside of the car. And cars tend to be secondary crime scenes. And that's really critical. So anything that they can glean from a car is going to be important. It will have saliva, it will have sweat, potential DNA from blood, and anything in there that might be related to the home of Nancy Guthrie's fingerprints. So cars are really should be seen as secondary crime scenes. They should be really examined well. The one thing I will say that I have not seen that I would like to see is I would like to see canines out there with them. I would like to see canines moving about because they can see what the naked eye can't see. They can pick up on the scent, and I would like to see canines around in the areas with law enforcement, before law enforcement, and after they leave to ensure that they're not missing anything at all.
All right, Sonny Slaughter, really appreciate your expertise. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome to our viewers here in the United States and all around the world. I'm Brian Abel in Atlanta. We begin this hour with breaking news out of Tucson, Arizona, where investigators have left a scene near Nancy Guthrie's home. All roads are now opened in the area. There had been a flurry of law enforcement activity over the past several hours. The Sheriff's Department posting on social media just a short while ago, quote, "Because this is a joint investigation at the request of the FBI, no additional information is currently available." Now, the sheriff said earlier they are actively working a lead near Guthrie's home. Forensics trucks were on the scene and left just a short while ago, and the focus of intense police activity appears to have been a residence that's about 2 miles from Guthrie's home. More than a dozen law enforcement vehicles were seen at the location. And CNN's Ed Lavandera was very close to that police activity. Here's what he reported within the last few hours.
What we witnessed in this neighborhood just 2 miles away from where Nancy Guthrie lives is some of the most significant law enforcement activity we've seen in this 2-week-long investigation and search for the 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. This neighborhood is part of Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood. You can access it without reaching any of the major roads. We saw a long stream of law enforcement vehicles, forensic vehicles, SWAT vehicles, descending down this street and on Friday night. It is not clear what has happened in terms of who, if anyone has been taken into custody. Authorities here are simply not saying at this point. Local law enforcement officials said that the information was being held at the request of the FBI. Presumably this means that they're working to get more clarity, as this still remains a very fluid situation, but it has been a